Hey, folks. Hey, happy Saturday. This is the first live I think I've ever done on a Saturday because I normally assume and figure that you guys are all out running the streets. But we are here tonight. So yeah, give me 1 second. I'm going to get in a few shout outs and what's ups and everything else like that. And then we'll just get it cranking. Yeah, let me see here. You know what, Soulflow? Listen, that's why I'm late now. I went ahead and I already grabbed the tea and everything else while I was trying to set up everything. I was like, I'd rather just be late and not have to get up and go get anything than come on time and then y'all get mad because I got to run to the kitchen for something. So, yeah. Hold on, I'm just getting over my notes here. All right, cool. This will be a fun live. Look, y'all got a 2-for-1 special today. Y'all got 2 videos in the same day, right? I'm hoping this thing is not lagging because for some reason I feel like this thing is lagging today. We're gonna find out. Hopefully not. Anyway, let's see here, and then we're starting exactly at the 2-minute mark. So let me see here. We got about 45 seconds. What up, D Bradford? Hey Calvin, looking forward to this just like your other lives. Give me something to watch on a Saturday instead of doing homework. Look at you in school. Good for you. I almost want to go back and get a few more professional degrees. There's not enough time for me to do it right now, though. That's the part that sucks. So, one of these days I'll figure it out, but, at least not right now. I got my bachelor's, but I would love to go and get a few additional elements of education. What up, Charlene? What up, Jay Jones? What up, Lynn Ferguson? What up, failed foster dog mom? I would love to have a dog right now. I just don't have time to take care of one. Lynn Ferguson said, I'm loving your music too. I appreciate that. I can't wait to give you guys some new stuff. As much as I love the hardcover and as much as I enjoyed making Symphonic Euphoria, I can't wait to give something new only because it's been a few years. But, just understand there's some great things cooking. All right. What up, Alan Lewis? Let me see. Trevor Taylor, what's up? All right, we're going to start. Okay, cool. So, long story short, this video tonight is specifically about the Michael Jackson Thriller 40th anniversary documentary. That's what we're talking about. So this is not going to be the live where I'm on here going off on politics and talking about the system. Not tonight. We'll save it for later in the week. All right. Needed some happy content because I was starting to feel like I was just bombarding you guys with all the ills of the world. So I was like, let me take about a good month to kind of balance it out. We're still going to talk about the heavy stuff and the things that are wrong in society, but let's take a month to loosen up just a tad bit because I think I'm scaring some of y'all off. And so, yeah, but I was really excited. I've been looking forward to this documentary because I really enjoyed the Off the Wall documentary from some years back, and I really enjoyed the Bad documentary from some years back. So I was like, yeah, we're definitely going to talk, Thriller, which is Thriller. You know what I mean? Like, what else can you say? Let me see a few overall notes. Now I'm going to kind of restructure how I'm going to approach this because the documentary as a whole is about 88 minutes, 90 minutes, which was cool. I'm not going to lie though, because it's Thriller and this is pretty much the pinnacle of all entertainment in regard to an album and marketing and impact and legacy and accolades. I just felt that 88 minutes wasn't enough, Now, and I'm sure that there was so much more that was probably featured and they had to keep chopping it down so that, the powers that be said, okay, this is fine. This is good for broadcasting. Because plus this is a Nelson George doc. And like Nelson George is one of my favorite music historians / critics because he's just very thorough. Like I think I told you guys, like one of the best books, if you ever really just want like some insight on music, is called I want to say it's called A Death of R&B. He wrote it way back in like the mid 80s. Let me see. I just want to make sure I'm giving y'all the right title here. Come on. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. The Death of Rhythm and Blues. That is an excellent book as far as just getting context about R&B music, Black music, what was happening in the business, not just in the 70s and 80s and the 90s, but really like the early elements, what was going on in the 1930s and the 40s, and how do we get from the 40s to the 50s and the 60s? Like he's been really good at that. He has other projects and stuff he's been a part of. So I was just like, for his name to be on it, I just know there's going to be so much we're giving. Now, I still think you're giving a lot of tidbits. And I think for this documentary, if you're a general casual fan of music, you just kind of want some insight, I think you get very well fed watching this. If you're somebody that's more of a music head and this is what you just live and breathe, and you it's almost like a part-time job for you, just being all in the mix with what's happening with music and everything, then a lot of what was already saw or what was featured and broadcast was stuff that you kind of already knew. There were some nuggets in there that I was appreciative of, but I think as somebody who's like a big diehard fan, I wanted a little bit more, but I appreciate the archival footage. I appreciate getting to hear the stems, getting to hear the demos. I just wish there was a tad bit more, just a little bit more. That's all I'm saying. But I still think that the job gets done. And I'm saying this because, again, understand there are other projects that have been highlighted in different documentaries that got more than 88 minutes. And again, this is Thriller we're talking about. Now, I think we've gotten to a space where we're just so used to Thriller getting the accolades that it receives that sometimes we don't really just stop and sit and remember just exactly what that album was. Understand, like, the fact that I wasn't even alive for this era, okay? I wasn't even around till the bad era started. But even in my generation, Thriller is a staple. In the generation that came after, as far as Gen Z, Thriller is still a staple. In the upcoming Alpha generation, you constantly see little kids on TikTok and Instagram with the little Michael Jackson. Like, it's just a generational thing that keeps going and going and going. That's probably never going to go anywhere. So I just needed a bit more. But with what was presented, all of that I thought was really good. Lots of great insight. And I think the also sad part is I'm glad they got this out now, because a lot of the people who were involved in a lot of these projects have passed on, and so the sad part is kind of seeing that as time progresses, there's a lot of big names that were associated with the project that aren't here anymore. So you couldn't really get their insight, or you just kind of had to use archival footage. So that's one of the sad parts, in addition to the fact Michael's not here anymore. That doesn't help either. But I would have rather, and this is just me in my imaginative, wishful, ideal head of mine, this would have been really great if it was a mini series that maybe had 3 episodes, maybe 4, right? And each episode is about maybe an hour, maybe an hour and a half, where you can really lock into all the aspects. So yeah, you let the first episode kind of be, again, the logistics, the early beginnings, not a quick zip through, but enough of some context and insight to paint the picture of who Michael Jackson was before 1982, right? So that covers Jackson 5, Jackson Variety Show, the Destiny Tour, the Triumph Tour, all of those different albums and everything else like that. Let that all be that aspect, and just the buildup of Michael, and how off the wall would be this massive album. Then let the next episode maybe be, the first half of the Thriller era, including the production, making the music, because Thriller, in my opinion, had somewhat of a slower rollout because The Girl Is Mine was a very subtle release, but it was very strategic, like covering all of that. And then, maybe it jumps into the impact of Billie Jean, and when you jump into Michael Mania, maybe that episode ends with Motown 25. Then the third episode is covering everything from Beat It to the Thriller video, the Pandemonium, and all that great stuff. The last episode covers the tail end of the Thriller era, the Victory Tour, the impact, and how it plays a role into today. I think if you would have done that, you would have been able to cover so much more, because there's so much we didn't get. But it's cool. I'm not about to sit here and complain. I'm grateful we had something to watch, but that's just my 2 cents. Let me see here. There's a quote in there I really loved, where one of the guys was saying, there are 2 things in the music business. There's, the business before Thriller and the business after Thriller. And I think that's such a layered statement. And I say that because when you really look at what Thriller was able to do, and we'll kind of jump into some of the accolades, just understand that after that album had come out, after the rollout and the promotional campaign was completed, the music business was never going to operate the same way again. There was now a new standard of how to roll out an album. Now, people wouldn't have the same kind of budgets. They wouldn't have the same kind of backing to kind of make some of these things happen. But again, just the idea of, from this point on, if you plan on coming out with something that's going to be successful, especially because we're now into this MTV music video era, we're more in like an FM station, more so genre specific kind of setup, then you're going to have to go hard or go home. The era of specifically letting your music just translate through the music is one piece, but now people want visuals, people want personality. Now, even when you're doing music videos, you're gonna have to learn how to be an actor. You might have to do a step or two. Everybody's not a dancer, but something better be choreographed in there, even if it's you just walking to the microphone. It's like all these different things would change, right? And then the tours are gonna change. And now there's conversations about imaging and conversations about, branding and how to make things bigger. And so I think that statement really kind of suits exactly what the music industry would become after 1982, right? You just saw a massive shift. And I do think it also sadly closed the door on some entertainers from before that era that weren't able to easily transition into that next wave of entertainment. But the world was just changing. There was so much going on around 82. Like you got Reagan who then came up in there. So the United States is going through all kind of shifts economically. And then the world is changing. Technology is changing. Like we said, music videos are now becoming a thing. You have the emergence of hip hop that's becoming a thing. Things are becoming more commercialized. And so it's a different world, right? So in the same way that you can look at like MTV and their first video was the Buggles video killed the radio star. Even that is kind of symbolic of what was going to happen in music. Now, when we fast forward to modern times, you could probably re-release that and say streaming killed the radio, video, and everybody star. But, so I thought that was a great bit there. Now, the documentary kind of goes into that early context again. They start off kind of highlighting young Michael. They kind of do a quick zip through of the Jackson 5 era, the Jacksons, and they kind of put some emphasis on the fact that around the time Michael was about 14, 15, 16, he wasn't in the best place, like mentally. He didn't really feel good about himself, mainly because that transition of going from child star to adult entertainer, it's not a smooth process for everybody. And because, again, I don't think people realize either, the Jackson 5 were so freaking huge. And one of the things that sucks is that Motown never wanted to pay the RIAA to certify what certain albums were. So there's so many acts from Motown where we're never really going to know what some of these albums sold because, hey, they didn't want to get the stuff certified because Barry was like, we ain't paying for that. And this is before the era of SoundScan. Remember, SoundScan didn't come out till about almost like 1990, 91. So when you're talking about counting album sales, SoundScan counts the actual individual CDs that are sold in stores. And then the RIAA, which I just realized they got an office down the street from my house. I was like, I might be switching jobs, but the RIAA, they're the group that looks at certifications and looks at shipments. So when you're talking about somebody who goes gold or platinum or diamond, that's RIAA certified. That's what that is. But because pretty much most of the acts never had their stuff submitted to RIAA for Motown, we'll never know what a lot of these folks sold. And so a lot of times, especially people who weren't around, so like people from my generation, people from the generations after, they always assume like, yeah, the Jackson 5 were big, but they weren't that big, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, y'all don't get it. Like, I mean, this is a group of black kids coming out of Gary, Indiana, and it's like their first 4 singles are all number one, right? I mean, just number one after number one. If they weren't getting number ones, they were getting top 10s on everything. So when you're talking about Beatlemania, Jackson 5 Mania was that on steroids. And what made it even better was these were black kids doing it. And these are kids that represented something you didn't often see in regard to what was being pushed in entertainment at the time, because these are kids with raw talent. These aren't kids that had music lessons and got to go to fancy private music schools and learn how to read music and have top tier choreographers teach them. This is stuff that kids did in their living room. This is at home. The other kids in the neighborhood are playing outside. They can't come outside because they got to rehearse, right? They can't go to somebody. Well, they didn't do birthday parties anyway. They were Jehovah's Witnesses, but they can't go to whatever event because they got a show tonight. And so the Jackson 5 is representative of that, just that work ethic that comes out of entertainers and that grind and that hunger and that, everything that came with that. And so people sometimes underestimate just how big they were. Now, the documentary does talk about how there was the slowdown, which there definitely was, but I would have approached it a bit differently because really the slowdown was among the lines of race. To white America, by the time you get to like the Skywriter album, there's definitely a slowdown from white America, from mainstream audiences. But as far as the R&B charts, black audiences never really jumped ship. They were always still very loyal. So as they were slowing down with the big top 10 hits and top 5 hits on the Hot 100, on the R&B charts, they were still racking up top 5s and top 10s like it was nobody's business. And then we get into that transition of leaving Motown, having the Epic Records release, but in between they have the Jackson's Family Variety Hour and everything else like that. So there's layers to it. Sorry, I'm reaching for my water here. But yeah, so again, going back to that point, they talk about, again, just Michael kind of like feeling kind of down because it's like, people, they loved little Michael. They loved the little kid with the super high pitched voice, but he felt like he wasn't getting that same love by the time he's 14, 15, 16. And then also around the time, this is right after his voice had gone through the change. If you're like a real Jackson head, you know that if you go and listen to that one live album they have where they're in Japan, Michael's voice was really going through the change. So he was fighting for his life trying to sing these songs. And this is after they've already locked or dropped and lowered the keys. And it was just like the voice was just not trying to cooperate because his voice was going through the change. And so now he's coming out of that phase, trying to rebrand. And it's just like, man. So they talk about that aspect. And then it transitions into kind of off the wall. I wish they would have spent a little bit more time on just the Jacksons era. And I get it. This is about Thriller, so we can't spend all day on all the pre stuff. Just get to Thriller already. But I'm a person that's all about context. You need to make everything make sense. Assume that whoever's watching this knows nothing about whoever it is that's being presented, right? They pretend they came from another planet. They ain't heard of no Michael Jackson. They didn't even hear a verse until they landed here, okay? That's how I'm like, you got to look at it. But, you know, so they talk about that aspect, and it leads us into Off the Wall, and they talk about how Off the Wall is, you know, this massive, great, big album. And they talk about, again, the Grammys and how, you know, the Grammys kind of pretty much slighted Michael. You know, Off the Wall was only nominated for 2 Grammys, one for like Best Male R&B Vocal Performance and one for Best Disco Song. Now, he only won one of the awards. It was the Best Male Vocalist Award. And even with Off the Wall, I think people underestimate just how big that album was. Mind you, Off the Wall is an album that is sitting right during the middle of the Disco Sucks era, right? Right during the middle of all of that chaos and the kickback. And we've done a million topics on the Disco Sucks movement. I'm not going to spend all night on it tonight, but if you would like more context on that, you can visit my So What Happened with Janet Jackson from All For You to Demita Joe. There's a segment in there where we talk about the Disco Sucks movement and how that affected Black entertainers, but we won't go into that tonight. But, you know, Off the Wall somehow was able to survive all of that, right? And it's right at the cusp of all of the things that are happening there. Again, 4 top 10 singles off of one album. Not a lot of artists were doing that at the time. This is an album that sells like 9 million copies. And mind you, the music industry was already slowly going into a slump around that time. And so Off the Wall is the 3rd biggest album of 1980. But again, it just only specifically get a Grammy for a vocal category. And it's like, we're grateful for the Grammy, but again, there's there's no Song of the Year nomination, no Album of the Year, no Best Song, no Best anything. Just, all right, put him in the Negro section of the Grammys and give him 1 award and send him on home. Like, there was kind of still this effort to always kind of compartmentalize Black entertainers and keep them in a box where they could never be equatable to white entertainers in the same spaces. Even if Black entertainers were doing something more massive, or even if they had a better presentation of what it is that they could put out there, right? Didn't matter. And this is why we saw so many Black acts, especially out of the late 70s into the early 80s, just be ignored by the masses, even though some of the greatest music comes out of that time period, right? And so, you know, they talk about that and just the fact that, again, the Grammy snub. And mind you, Off the Wall had been #1 on the R&B charts for 16 weeks. 16 weeks. This is almost just like, and I'm going to get to MTV in a second, but this is almost like MTV ignoring Rick James again, where, again, you have Street Songs, or you know, that album, 20 weeks at #1 on the R&B charts, either 19 or 20 weeks at #1 on the R&B charts. Just, I mean, and again, just totally ignored by the masses, right? Even when it came to like the Billboard Hot 100 and the Billboard 200, like the singles and the album never really saw the top of the Billboard 200 or the top of the Billboard Hot 100. But mind you, the hits and everything were racking up on the R&B charts. So, you know, it just highlights how segregated the music industry was. Again, I referenced this in that Janet So What Happened All For You to Demita Joe video. But again, so you kind of just see a lot of the things that have taken place. And then, you know, they also talk about, you know, how that pretty much, it inspires him to say, all right, y'all want to play in my face? Okay, we're going to show you. Y'all about to learn today, because I just had this album that sold 9 million albums, which not a lot of people were really doing that at the moment. But all right, I'm going to give y'all a reason to never ignore me again. And so that's how we end up getting to the precursors of what would be Thriller. I'm going to pause for 1 second and read some comments, and then we're going to keep it going. Every time I drink tea, that little string always finds its way, every single time. All right, let's see here. Yes, Tyler, I agree. 88 minutes wasn't enough to describe the phenomenon. I could have had 88 minutes just to talk about the production of the album. Somebody said, what about Michael's Ghost? it's a different time period because I think by then that's like almost like 97, and that was really just pushed overseas, specifically in Europe. So Ghost doesn't really make that impact in the United States. I mean, it's kind of there now because we have access to YouTube and people can go back and look, but Ghost kind of came and went, to be honest. Yeah, it was a very different time by then. Like at this point, the man is a punching bag for the media, so it's just a different space. Where can you watch the doc? Oh, by the way, I'm giving all kind of spoilers of this doc, so if you haven't seen it yet and you don't want me to ruin it for you, come back later. My bad, I forgot to say that at the beginning. But this is available on Showtime and Paramount Plus. Thank you for Monique for also putting that in the chat, sharing that as far as where it's available. Upstart pisses me off how his estate just sits on so much concert footage. I'm telling you, because by the time they were showing them clips of the Victory Tour and just how crisp and clean and how good the sound was, I'm like, y'all ain't gonna release this anytime soon. I'll get to it. I got a whole bunch of stuff I want to cover on here. Jalil, I'm going to address that too, because why didn't they touch on Lady of My Life? There was a few songs they didn't cover because they barely talked about PYT. Like, man. Let me see. All right, I want to keep going. Let's see. Oh, Don, thank you. I forgot the Jackson 5. They even had a cartoon. Actually, all right, y'all know I'm pressed. Give me 1 second. I gotta grab one of my shirts I had. I got it right in here somewhere. Damn. Now I haven't worn it since college, but I still keep it. Look, I had a whole like Jackson 5 t-shirt. Bam, look at that. L, right? Okay, listen, y'all didn't see me throw that. Just pretend I had an assistant pick that up. But yeah, listen, y'all know in this house, we go hard for the Jacksons. Okay, we love all the Jacksons, right? Yeah. All right, I want to keep going because there's a few more things out here. Yes, Sky, when the Thriller doc actually came out today, I'm just hopping on it while I got some energy, right? I'm trying to get the Mariah doc finished, so I'm trying to balance out getting you guys some content and working on that, because when I really like harp down and work on that, I can't really do this at the same time. It's really like a whole 2 weeks of not seeing me, maybe even 3 or 4. All right. Okay, I want to keep going. Again, what up to everybody? What up, Terrain Rain Reloaded? Check his channel out too. He be going in. I be appreciating that. Sometimes he be saying stuff I don't even be saying. So I appreciate people that are about it on their channels when it comes to talking some real stuff, right? So check out his channel, definitely. Somebody said, how'd you keep that shirt still looking good after college? You want to know what? Because I only wore it like twice. Like, anytime I go to like a concert or something, I never wear the shirts more than once. I'll wear them maybe at the show, and then I just kind of keep them. So that Jackson 5 t-shirt I've had since like 2008, right? Okay, I want to keep going, and then I'll come back to the chat. I promise I'm not ignoring you guys. I'm just trying to, there's so much I want to cover, so I don't want to have us on here for 5 days talking. All right. Where's I at here? Oh, and one of the things I thought that was we're not doing ads, skip that. One of the things I thought that was really dope. They had the Waters in there. First of all, I never knew the Waters were so involved with like the Thriller album. Now, if you don't know, the Waters, they're like a set of siblings that pretty much they sing background on so much stuff. If you've seen The Lion King, they're the background vocalists on that. They've done a lot of stuff with Motown, you know, Diana Ross, Patti LaBelle, even some stuff with Janet from back in the day. Like they have been a part of everything. There's a documentary, 20 Feet from Stardom. That's a really great documentary that gives some insight about their contributions to music. But I mean, they have been a part of so much. So, you know, I had no idea that was them on Wanna Be Starting Something. I just thought that was Michael layering himself. And they kind of talk about that, how Michael tells them, like, I love working with you guys because you guys kind of sound like me. Like when I heard, you know, when they get to the Mama Say Mama Sama Maku says, I just thought that was Michael. I really thought that was just him, you know, recording over himself and layering and stacking with probably 20 versions of himself. I had no idea they were on that song. So I was like, okay, that's a good tidbit. So I was like, that was really, really cool. Now, one of the beefs I did have is the order of the documentary is kind of interesting because they start off giving context about early Michael, then they jump into the production of some of the songs, but not all the songs, and then they kind of jump into the album. So I'm going to kind of restructure the rest of this live. I'm going to talk about the individual songs towards the end, but there are going to be moments where I talk about some of the impact that the songs may have had with videos and stuff as we go along. But as far as like my thoughts on each individual song, we'll say that towards the end. So they talk about the production. We're going to come back to that later on, but eventually they get to MTV and MTV shenanigans and how they didn't want to play the Billie Jean video. And what I still find so funny, right? They were playing in Michael Jackson's face with Billie Jean as far as MTV. And mind you, this is when MTV was still relatively new. They had only been out for about a year and a half. And mind you, they still weren't even a nationwide network yet, because not every place had cable in the United States. Like, I don't even think cable got to New York till almost like 1986. So I might be wrong. Somebody in New York can correct me on that. But again, and I said this in one of these videos I've done, but like around that time period between about 1981 to 83, MTV only had 120 music videos to even play. So it's like y'all barely have anything to play. And here you have an entertainer who, we understand he wasn't at his Thriller status yet, but he had definitely just come from his Off the Wall era, which still, if we're trying to make something equatable, in the same way that Usher's Confessions was this massive album that sold like 9 or 10 million copies in the US, you know, that's kind of the same stature Michael was at that time coming into Thriller as far as this massive album. And just think about how big Usher Confessions was, or think about how big a TLC Crazy Sexy Cool was. Like, these are massive albums, right? Or how big, I'm trying to think of all the ones that stayed between about 9 and 11 million copies. An Outkast, Speaker Box Love Below kind of project, how big that was, right? Or Tony Braxton's Secrets. Like, imagine an artist of that kind of caliber coming to give a network their video, and they're like, oh, you're not our target, you know, you're not our target marketing act because we have a different audience. You don't really fit the mold of what it is we do. And mind you, you know, the Off the Wall album at that point had generated more revenue than MTV as a whole network. So imagine telling Michael Jackson, and mind you, that's just solo Michael. That doesn't even include this Jackson 5, Jackson's Michael, a guy who's been a part of a family that has been a staple in entertainment for the last, you know, almost 20 years. And you're talking, well, maybe like 15 at that point, but, you know, literally trying to tell them, you know, this isn't going to work. So I was like, that's a nonsense. So I'm glad that the exec over at, you know, CBS and Epic was like, okay, either y'all gonna play this video or we're gonna yank everybody from the network that's from our label. And again, it just goes to kind of highlight, again, that conversation of just how the music industry was segregated. You know, there was a study from Harvard back in 1972. It was released on May 11th. And maybe one day we'll do a video just talking about that. But it was called A Study of the Soul Music Environment Prepared for Columbia Records. And what they ended up doing is they looked at the business model of Columbia Records. Now, this is specifically unrelated to Michael Jackson. I'm just painting a bigger picture. But they looked at the business model of what Columbia Records was doing at the time. Now, they're looking at, you know, just everything up until that point. How does Black music fit into their business model? And are they, as a label, giving Black acts adequate promotion, fair marketing? Are they getting the same thing that white acts are getting? And when I tell you, this report tore that label up so bad, because at that point, literally the only Black act that was even getting any kind of major push in 1971 from Columbia was Sly and the Family Stone. Like, that was it. Or not even Sly and the Family Stone. I don't even think they were on Columbia, but just in general in 1971, as far as Black acts, period, in the music business, like, they were the one act that was really like getting some serious push. So the report just goes in on how specifically, I guess they would have been on Columbia. If they weren't on Columbia, they would somebody associated with Columbia, because for some reason Sly and Family Stone showed up in the report. But it just talked about how labels had really just played in the faces of a lot of Black entertainers. And there were so many acts that could have been bigger, but the labels chose not to invest because there was still that fear of trying to make that cross-racial as well as cross-generational appeal in music between Black artists and white audiences. And so a lot of labels constantly always kind of pulled back when it came to how they could have pushed Black acts. Now, I think that varies. I think Motown is a different conversation. I think Motown had an approach where they were really trying to push and crossover. This is why they were always trying to make acts like the Temptations and the Supremes, you know, do the Copacabana and be on television. And, like, you know, they had a totally different approach from some of the labels. But again, and also Motown was a Black label, so it's a different conversation. But, you know, so it talks about just, again, the issues of race in the music industry. And so, you know, we see what happens with the Billie Jean video. And mind you, what's even crazier is at this point, music videos aren't even eventful yet. Most music videos, because a lot of artists still weren't even really making them, but a lot of music videos up until that point were just performance videos. It'd be a shot of somebody performing their song with the guitar and in the band, and, you know, get a few little solo pants, and that normally was a music video. There were a handful of other acts that kind of had music videos that had a little bit of a plot, that had a little bit of a theme, but music videos were not what they would eventually become. And then you get this video like Billie Jean, And you got the man walking on these little sidewalks that light up. And I need people to also understand, especially for people in my generation and people who come in the later generations who weren't there for this, we have to also stop looking at music through a lens of 2023 and judging it by what was available in 1982. Because sometimes I'll see comments and people like, oh, this video was overrated. It wasn't even all that. And I'm like, but you were born in like 2002. So no disrespect, but keep it real light and bright. Because at this point, when you're talking about what's now available for entertainers, whether it be their concert shows, music videos, I mean, they have the world at their feet and you can probably just do anything creatively. But when we're talking about the music industry in those early 80s, technology was very limited. Okay. So even with Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, the way that was so innovative at the time, like, you know, if you weren't around and you're in my era, we was like, oh, okay, he just made a double or a triple of himself. What's the big deal? But at that point in time, that was some serious stuff. And he's dancing with himself. Oh, wait a minute, you know. So anyway, getting to my point though, but like with Billie Jean, right? And so this video that has just so much with it, right? Even in the documentary, they're talking about how Michael was just dancing so hard, and even the cameraman didn't even know what to look at, because we're still not even in a space where you have music videos that have a lot of choreography and how to film them and how to get certain angles and stuff. We're not even there yet. And so it was like, MTV, y'all got some nerve. So, you know, eventually MTV caves in and they finally start playing the video, and literally you see a shift in just how music starts to be consumed, because Billie Jean is a massive hit. Like, it is massive, right? And I'm going to come back to it at the end, but just understand, I think Billie Jean as a song it's a gem. We're going to come back to it, but there's just something about that song that is always going to pull people in from any generation, from any era. And it's so funny because production wise, it's such a simple production, but I think it just has so much but so little going on that it just pulls people in. We'll get back to that in a sec, or probably like an hour by the time I get to the songs. But they just talk about all that, and they talk about even with the dancing how, and they had some choreographers on there just talking about how even the way Michael moves, because he knows his music, and it's not even just about knowing the music, but like because he's so hands-on, even when he records these different songs and everything, all those little, all that stuff like that is kind of just little bits that he adds to just bring in some extra flavor to the song. And that's why even when he would perform, it's like he's moving to every beat that comes in, every kind of sound effect, every chime, hi-hat, everything for him is a piece of the song and the production. We're going to put a hit to it. We're going to hit something with the head look, something, all of that, you know, you just live and breathe the song, right? And I think that approach to music has definitely changed how visual performers entertain, right? I think that even inspires why bands do like orchestra hits and stuff when you have visual performers, you know, that are doing their performing or that they dance. You know, that random orchestra hit where people start doing choreography just to the music and what the band is doing. And, you know, now we're in a space when people do live performances, they don't just play the song as it's recorded. The song is going to be enhanced so many ways by the band. And you have a lot of artists, especially the ones that dance, where it's to the point that when they are creating how their arrangements are going to be for the different tours, that specifically the arrangements are almost calibrated for the choreography, which kind of, they hinted Michael doing that in the Billie Jean video and at Motown 25, which is the next piece I was going to jump into as far as Motown 25. Now, I've been saying for like the last year that one of the things that sucks about being a consumer of music in this modern era is that music is no longer a collective experience, right? Music is now, it's become so expanded and expansive and accessible because, you know, like I said, there's 40 million songs added to Spotify every year. So that idea of everybody kind of being in a collective space and having a collectively understood approach to what was happening in music, that doesn't really exist anymore. We all kind of have created our own bubbles of what we like, especially in the era of playlisting and streaming. You know, you find the artist that you're into and you live in your bubble. Radio is not really as relevant as it once was. We don't have music television programming anymore. So it's not like all the kids are turning on MTV in the morning or BET in the morning while they get dressed for school and everybody's seeing the same music videos and the same songs. And now they're on the bus talking about it. Those days have gone. They've come and gone. Yes, we have YouTube, but YouTube, again, is something that is, again, it's individualistic. You don't even know what to look up unless it's been recommended to you. And most likely what's recommended to you is stuff that's already calibrated to what you listen to or what you watch. Same thing with Spotify, same thing with Apple Music, same thing with, well, I will say Tidal is a little bit more left field where they do try to give you a bit more of things that are outside of what you may normally listen to. But getting to my point, Motown 25 was so massive at the time that it had come out. Like, just understand that, like, Thriller had already been out. It had sold decently. It wasn't selling a whole rack of records. It was doing okay. But understand that after that Motown 25 aired, like, I mean, that carried Michael Jackson through the rest of 1983. And then in November of 83 is when the Thriller video would come out, and then that would carry him into the rest of 84. But understand, like, that was a massive event. I remember the musician that used to play the organ at the church my parents used to take me to when I was little. I remember he still had the VHS that he recorded off of TV when, you know, it aired. Like, the guy that played the organ, like, still had that on VHS because he was like a big Michael and Janet fan, which is kind of cool because I used to like going to their house because every time I went to their house, they always had like a Michael show or something on. Or even at church, when we would be at church, when he'd be playing, he'd always kind of sneak in these little snippets of like Michael or Janet related songs in the music, just little tiny bits. Like, I'd always hear like Janet, all right, dum 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 dum. I'm like, wait a minute, I know that. But understanding that Motown 25 was huge, like, and everybody who was on that got to benefit. I always say, in my opinion, one of the most underrated performances from that night was the DeBarge and High Energy performance. There was this girl group called High Energy that had been out since the 70s. I really would have loved to see them get bigger, but it's a dual performance where it's DeBarge are singing All This Love, and then High Energy comes out and sings He's a Pretender. And then they sing the DeBarge song together. I think it's called Can't Stop. Can't stop. We're on the right track. Anyway, the live version is better than the studio version, but that was a fun performance. But just know that everybody who was on there, like, everybody got to eat that night. Like, because I mean, it was so massive. It was just a massive thing. But for Michael to do Billie Jean, and again, you see the moonwalk. It had already been out, but he helped to popularize it. And they talked about just how chaotic it was in the venue, right? By the time Michael finishes, the crowd is eating out of his hand. Like, they don't, there's no way to contain the energy. They're trying to bring everything back down so they can keep the show going. But I mean, it was just a high. Like, it would definitely suck to be the person who had to go after, you know, Michael Jackson with that. But just understand that the combination of the Billie Jean video and the Motown 25 performance, it was just like, okay, that's the kickoff to Michael Mania. Like, and it's only going to get bigger. So, you know, Motown 25, I'm glad that they were able to talk about that. But again, that conversation of collective experience, it was so big. It was something that everybody talked about. And it's one of the reasons why it's still referenced even today. For people looking from like a 2023 lens, they're like, oh, this actually looks, you know, it looks pretty simple. Okay, it's him. They got the playback going. The mic ain't even on. And he did the moonwalk. Ooh, you know, that's kind of the narrative you kind of get from folks. But I don't think people, again, realize that even that performance style was something you hadn't really quite seen in that specific capacity yet. Yeah, there were other entertainers that were doing all kinds of things, but for it to be on a platform like that show, and for it to be in a space where it's already celebrating the contributions of this major label that's had this massive impact on not just Black music and Black entertainment, but music around the world. And then you get this Michael Jackson, who everybody knows he's about to even be bigger than what he is. That's the thing. Like, every now and then there's an entertainer that comes out and you're watching them ascend. And so the world has been watching Michael ascend, especially after Off the Wall. They've seen what has happened with Billie Jean. And understand, there's no additional performances from the Thriller era outside of the Victory Tour. So there's already anticipation where people want to see this man perform. They want to see him live, right? And so now he's finally here. And, you know, he's doing the different dancing. And I love that they talked about how he incorporated different aspects of choreography and movement into his show, right? And so even though it seems like a very simple performance, it's definitely innovative for the moment. And it's definitely a performance that, you know, is still impactful as to why people still talk about it today. And I think for those who always have the most to say about it, understand there's nothing on that stage but him, right? There's no background dancers. There's not even a band. There's no visuals. There's no LED lights. There's no lasers. There's no pyro. There's no water coming out of the floor. The stage is not going to move. There's no fog. There's none of that. It's literally just him. So for him to be by himself on that stage and be able to pull in that crowd, and mind you, that's a crowd of multiple ages. That's a crowd of 10-year-olds, 50-year-olds, 30-year-olds, and his celebrity peers, and all of them are in there losing their minds. Just understand what was happening during that moment in time. Today in 2023, it doesn't seem like a big deal because now we've seen any and everything done, because we're now seeing the children of Michael and the children of Prince and Whitney and James Brown and all these people and all the folks that now do what they do. And so all of this just seems like the norm to us. But understand that during that era, for a lot of folks, this is the first time you're seeing certain aspects of entertainment like this. And when we're talking about a global conversation, understand internationally, all of these different countries were developing their music industries in different pockets. It's not like today where somebody comes out with an album right now and it goes to number whatever in all the countries in the same. This is a totally different time period. I always like to look at South Korea as an example, because again, even, and they do talk about K-pop, which I thought was a great example, but understand that up until about the 70s, if you're talking South Korea, the majority of their music industry was like Korean folk songs. So songs like Katadan and some other things like that. And something like that period of about the early 80s and like a Motown 25, for a lot of folks, that's the first time they're ever seeing anything like that. Anything with an entertainer that literally, understand, a moonwalk for somebody who has not paid attention to American entertainment, and they turn on the TV and see, what was that? Even the guy that was on the show, that was the music critics from the LA Times, was like, I had to call and be like, did they have some kind of special trick to make the floor move? Like, so understand that when we're talking about international audiences, when we're talking about what happened internationally, like sometimes for a lot of folks, Motown 25 was their first time seeing Michael on TV. And that, I mean, it created that pandemonium. So understand that as Thriller was selling these millions and millions of copies in the United States, he was gaining traction all around the world in different pockets. And I think that's one of the reasons why the era lasted so long, because all of these different countries were starting to pick up on the momentum. Now, Europe is a different conversation, because Europe and the United States kind of had an industry that mirrored. But when we're talking about, you know, Central and South America, when we're talking about Southeast Asia, they've always been familiar with music in the United States. But now this new wave of how music is operating with music videos and visual performances and just the overall shift in what was happening in music, you know, they didn't get it at the same rate that the United States did. So it's kind of like some places are playing catch up. And I think that's why there's such a loyalty to a lot of those early American acts from between about the 70s to the mid 80s globally. There's some people who they worship the ground some of these entertainers walk on. I said this in, I don't remember what happened was, but there's a lot of American entertainers that are pretty much bigger stars in Japan than they were in the United States when you look at the number of hits they had. So even if, I know I love to bring up his sister, but you know, even if you're talking like Janet, like, so in the United States, Janet has 10 number one singles. If you go to Japan, she has like 38. So, or 38 or 40. So it's, and then like Tina Turner, as big as she was in the United States, you know, she was massive in Europe. We know she was huge in Japan. Same thing with some of these other acts. So Mariah Carey is massive in Japan. Whitney Houston was massive in Japan. Prince was massive in Japan. So just understand that as time continued to progress and as music continued to evolve, when we're talking about those conversations of pioneers, when we're talking about those early conversations of what would create the substance of what eventually would be today, that's all rooted in those early years that some people like me weren't around for, or, you know, that's rooted in those early years of those moments that we look back on now and some people think are overrated, but it's like, you just had to be there. If you aren't there, I don't know what to tell you. And going back to the K-pop conversation, understand which, there's a podcast. I wish I could think of what, I think it's called. I'm actually going to find it and actually reference it for you guys really quick. There's a podcast called, dang, what is it called? What's it called? Hold on, give me a minute, because it's actually really good. It's called, I can't remember what it's called. Hold on. One of my friends also texted me this. So give me 1 second. I'm trying to educate y'all up in here. So we got to make sure we give everybody the credit where credit is due. I don't want y'all thinking all this just comes from me. Okay, I think the podcast is called Code Switch, but they have an episode where they talk about the early origins of K-pop. And they talk about how when you get to those 80s, how, especially around Seoul, Korea, you know, they had a certain strip of town where it's kind of the area for all the American GIs. And mind you, things are still segregated as far as entertainment. So there's the black clubs and there's the white clubs. And so these black clubs that got the New Jack Swing playing and the R&B and everything else like that, a lot of people from the Korean communities were so anxious to kind of get into those clubs and see what was happening and see what the Americans were doing and what was happening with dance and stuff. Because this is the era of New Jack Swing and Bobby Brown and Michael Jackson and Karen White and Jody Watley and all those people. And so people were literally going to this club and almost taking notes of what they were doing as far as the dancing, as far as how the music sounded. And that would be the early remnants of what would eventually create the Korean pop market as it would blow up in the 90s. And then when we fast forward to the 2010s and the modern times, how we would get like a 2NE1 or a BoA or a Lee Hyroy or BTS and all of them. So just understand all this stuff comes back full circle. Anyway, I'm going to pause for a second and then read some comments and we're going to keep it going. All right. All right. Somebody said Off the Wall should have been nominated for Album of the Year. I agree. I want to see what was nominated that year. Let's see what it was. Let's see. Album of the Year nominees, Grammys 1980. I just want to see. This was. Oh, this is. Remember our conversation about how segregated the industry was? Okay, Frank Sinatra, Trilogy, Past, Present, and Future. Pink Floyd, The Wall. Barbra Streisand, Guilty. And these are all massive acts, by the way. Billy Joel, Glass Houses. And then Christopher Cross, the Christopher Cross album. Those are the... They could have squeezed one more album in that category. I don't know who I would have yanked down out of this to put Off the Wall. But yeah, you just see how different the industry was. We weren't even in the running. That's some nonsense. All right. Thank you, Reeler. The first album to have 4 top 10 singles. That's Off the Wall. Steven said, should I leave if I've seen it? I mean, it's a documentary, so it's kind of like you can. I'm not kicking nobody out. Feel free to stay. Just don't be mad if I share too much and y'all don't want. You didn't want it to be ruined, right? Let's see. Let me see. Skywin, did they at least get into the production on Human Nature? Yes, they do briefly talk about it. I'm gonna get to that too. I'm trying to get through this chat here. Somebody said Michael was hot after Off the Wall. I would have been hot too. I've been so pissed. Oh, I would have been pissed. Livid. Ooh, don't play in my face like that. Let me see. Stellar Avenger said, don't forget Blame It on the Boogie. Yeah, Blame It on the Boogie. And what else is out there? I like a lot of the Jackson's material. So like Blame It on the Boogie, Things I Do for You, You Are My Lovely One. Let me, no, I like, I think You Were Made for Me is still Jackson 5. Let Me Show You. There's some good one. Walk Right Now is a good one. I love Walk Right Now. That was a great song. Can You Feel It? They have some gems, right? Some great ones. Exactly. Alma of Eartha said, and the Rock With You video was awesome too. And Rock With You still a gem. I think I said this before. The first time, and this is how you know when music is good. Like the first time I think I heard Rock With You, I was probably 8 or 9, maybe. I'm sure. The first time I heard it and realized what it was and who it was. And I thought it was a new song. I didn't even realize it was from like 1980. I thought it was, because it just had this fresh sound. I've always said like a lot of times, especially if you use a lot of live instruments, your music sounds a little bit more timeless, as opposed to if it's all programmed and it's whatever drum kits are out and whatever synthesizers are popular at the moment. The challenge with that sometimes is when that sound goes out of date, then the songs get dated with it. But live, fresh instruments will always make a song sound fresh. So even Earth, Wind, and Fire, September, I think the first time I noticed the song and paid attention to it was watching the movie Soul Food when it played in the beginning of the movie. And I was so pressed about the song. My mom was nice and got me the soundtrack album. And I thought that was a new song as well. I didn't realize it was from the 70s. I was like, what? That bright sound and live instrumentation and celebratory kind of music that stuff will never age. It's going to always sound good. What up, Corey T? What up, Damon? All right. Dro said, don't forget the cassette tapes, double cassette recorders, making copies for friends way before the internet and streaming it. I don't think people remember that. Like, because, oh, God, recording off the radio, I just remember sometimes you would hear a song and you didn't even know who it was, right? Because maybe the radio DJ didn't announce who it was, and you just have to sit around and wait to hopefully hear it again. And mind you, this is before telecom. This is before all the radio stations got bought up by Clear Channel and well, now it's iHeart, and I forgot what the other main company was. This is when all the radio stations were still independently owned, so there weren't national syndicated playlists, and you weren't going to keep hearing the same song every other hour. Sometimes they would play a song and you might not hear it again for 2 days, right? And so you would just be on the lookout for a song, and then you'd finally you might be cleaning your room and it's on you. Oh shoot! And you running and you trying to get a cassette tape and put it in the thing and record, and you get maybe the end of the first verse through the end, and then right as it's getting to the end, the DJ starts talking over the song. They just mess up the whole track, and so you still got to listen to it and just enjoy it in the way that it was. I remember even when because I lived in the U.S. I was born and raised in the U.S., but I lived in Europe for a few years. I remember when TLC No Scrubs came out, I was still in Europe at the time, and we didn't have TV there. They had MTV Italian, but my dad was not paying for Italian cable because we didn't speak Italian, so we didn't really watch TV. So, every now and then, if a song was blowing up in the United States, it would cross over to Italian radio. And I just remember, I thought No Scrubs just sounded so cool. It didn't sound like anything that was out at the time, and I had been trying my damnedest to just get that song recorded on tape. And then finally, I caught it, and I caught the end of the first verse through the end. And this is the version. They weren't even playing the version with Left Eye on it at the time. So I had a pleasant surprise when I got back to the United States and saw the video. And I was like, she's rapping on this too? Like, it was a time, but that idea of just recording. And then I still have like some of those tapes. And it's so funny because like most of the tapes are songs that never all the way in full. It's either half the beginning got cut off or half the end got cut off. It was a time. What a time. Let me see. Somebody said he brought the house down. Charlene said Michael became global that night. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, somebody said we're spoiled. Yeah, those cassette tape days. All right, we're gonna keep going because I don't want to get too far off the Richter here. Okay. So we talked about how great Motown 25 was, how the crowd was, how great that was. And again, the conversation was just generational impact and how that would kind of set the bar for just music in general, right? There's another great quote in there where one of the producers, I want to say that was Terry Lewis that said that, where he's talking about there's vocalist versus style, right? And he says style wins in regard to singing, right? So everybody that sings, but what is it that separates you from somebody else? And so when you look at somebody like a Michael Jackson, there's an entire identity and style associated with his way of singing, everything from the different kind of inflections and all that kind of stuff, right? And so they talk about how, again, that distinctive voice is kind of one of the things that helps to cement somebody's legacy. So just like I said in my R&B is Dead series, where I talk about that formula that artists should use if they want a big, massive commercial hit, one, the really, really catchy melody that stands out, something that's just very, in your face, catchy medley, and then again, the really, really just bright music that's just bam, just boom, it's here, it has arrived, it's lively, it wakes you up. And then, of course, a distinctive vocal approach, meaning something about that vocal doesn't sound like anything else. It doesn't mean you have to be the best singer in the room. You don't have to sit and sing like Phil Perry and sound like Luther Vandross or sound like Whitney Houston, but the vocal should be something that stands out and sounds so different that it pulls people in. So going back to when I was talking about like the TLC No Scrubs, when they would get to that chorus, because understand, like on that hook, you have T-Boz, you have Chili, you have Deborah Killings, you have Candy, you have Tiny, and I think there's one other person that are all singing and blending on that. And so it's kind of just like ear candy, like, oh, that sounds cool, different. And so boom, there's that conversation of distinctive vocal approach. And I always reference like a Khalees milkshake. Because again, it doesn't even have to be somebody singing under a table. The way that she has that very animated, almost nasally hook that she uses, that's the part that makes the song really stand out with the interesting melody and the production. And you're like, okay, that's interesting. And then before you know it, it blows up, right? And so that's kind of like what we're talking about. So I thought that was an interesting approach because, again, Michael does have, so many different aspects to his voice. And by the way, the folks that keep trying to say this man can't sing, look, when I tell you, I'm tired of some of you ones that were born back in like 2001 and your first memory of music was trying to get to You and That Booty. No disrespect to anybody on that song, but like, please do us a favor and stop trying to come after all the people that were before your time. Keep it light and bright. But, I think people play in Michael's face when they talk about him as a vocalist. Like, one, you can't talk about Michael vocally without acknowledging everything that happened during the Jackson 5. And I think vocally, his best eras are everything during the Jackson's era. That's when you just hear some amazing work. And I always think, I love the vocal on Get on the Floor with Off the Wall, like that one there. Like, don't play in Michael's face vocally. Yes, we know the voice got damaged in the later years from over touring, and it comes with age and everything else that came down the line. But when Michael was still in his healthy pocket and everything was where it was supposed to be, Michael had it down. And even in the later years when the voice was a bit damaged, he still had some of the best layering and best blending in his production. So stop playing in Michael's face. Anyway, what else was I going to say? They have a moment where they talk about the E.T. storybook album that ended up, I didn't know it was shelved. That's one thing I was never really familiar with. Like, I always remember seeing the picture. I never knew the full correlation with Michael Jackson and E.T. So I was like, okay, I get that. There we go. They talk about the label not wanting to push the Thriller video, because they also talk about the Beat It video and how great it was, and the choreography, and bringing in everybody as far as like getting the guitar riffs and bringing in folks from Van Halen, and just, you know, Beat It becoming this massive, just again, a massive hit. Amazing song, great video. Again, choreography, all of that kind of telling the story. That's one of the other things too when we're talking about choreography. They highlight, and they really highlighted as well with Thriller, but again, even the choreography telling a story. It's not about just hitting every move, but it's about each move having purpose and have reasoning behind it, and having an element of being a complement to whatever the song is about, and fitting the mood of everything, right? No disrespect to a lot of the choreography that's out now, but I haven't really been a fan of a lot of the newer choreography. And I'm not talking about the TikTok stuff. That's another spectrum of dancing. It's another spectrum, but we're now in a space, like, I always like people that dance on the top of the rhythm. Some people dance to specifically lyrics and they make their choreography around the lyrics, and some people dance on the ones and threes. But we're kind of in this weird space now where a lot of choreographers will try to squeeze like 500 counts in 1 8 count. And so some of these dancers look like they're almost having seizures, because I'm like, you're losing the musicality because you're trying to do so much in such a small amount of time. Like, it just doesn't look that great. That's all I'm saying. No disrespect to the people that are doing it. Do you? But let's mix it up some, please. But no, they talk about the label not wanting to push the Thriller video, right? Because they're like, you know, at this point, you know, Thriller had sold decently. You know, Thriller's at about 12 or 13 million copies sold. So we don't really need to push this anymore. We're good. Because understand too, this is the era where, and this would be a thing even into the 90s, where a lot of times labels weren't that pressed. Once they had met their bottom line and made a profit and exceeded everything, okay, we don't really have to push this anymore because we've made the money we need to make from it. Because understand, when an album sells 10 million copies and it retails for $7 or $8 or $9 or $10, and by the time we get to the 90s, the price goes up to about 13, 14, and everything else like that. I mean, these are tens of millions of dollars that are generated. So the label was very happy with Thriller. They were ready to, you know, jump into the next era, because, hey, this album came out in the fall of 82. We're well in 80, you know, going into 84. We can let this album go, Michael. And he's like, nah, I got more I want to do. Like, hell, the album's called Thriller. We're going to do something with the song Thriller, right? And so, you know, the video was going to cost $1.2 million to make. And they were saying at the time, most videos were about $50K to put together, right? And that 1.2 million today would be about 3.5 million. So the label's like, we don't see the purpose in doing that. And so, you know, they make a deal with, you know, a production company where it's like, or a distribution company. Okay, yeah, you fund our video, we'll go ahead and make a documentary in regard to the making of the video as well. And then, yeah, everybody says, great idea. They sign off on it. We get the Thriller video. So we get the Thriller video and we get this wonderful documentary with all the behind the scenes. And again, pioneering, again, kind of one of those first elements of a behind the scenes and a making of the video. And I think that's a video doc that sold like 5 million copies alone, right? And so they spend time and they really just talk about Thriller. I love how they spent so much time just talking about the logistics of making everything from styling the clothes, everything from trying to do trial and error to get the wolf look to be right. And then again, the conversation of the choreography where, you know, John Landis was like, even with the choreography, I don't want any Michael Jackson moves. We don't need a moonwalk. We don't need a kick. We don't even need, let's do something that just really fits with the song. Let's just go out of the box, right? And so again, it's Thriller. What else can you say, right? And so they just kind of talk about just how great that was and how Thriller at this point, because we've rolled the wave of Beat It and Billie Jean, and it's this massive album, right? Because like I said, Motown 25 carries Thriller through most of 1983, right? So then we get the Thriller video that comes out in the fall of 83 going into 84, and it pushes Thriller well into the summer. Like, understand, Thriller was #1 for 37 weeks on and off during its tenure. On the Billboard the Billboard 200, the song Thriller peaked at #4 on the Hot 100. But as far as Billboard 200, #1 for 37 weeks between 1982 and 1984. I don't know if it ever was #1 in 82, but definitely in 83 it was #1 at one point. Just understand how massive that is. And they talk about the fact that the album, yes, it's selling 1 million copies a week. And mind you, some of those numbers can never really even be confirmed because, again, this is before SoundScan. So when we're talking about those international markets and what the rules were when it came to reporting, every market had their own set of rules when it came to reporting album sales. So Thriller is an album where we'll never really know the official tally for the sales of that album. Same with Bad, honestly. Like they were just so massive and selling so much. We're never going to know the full tally, right? And so they kind of talk about that. They put an emphasis on Michael's urge to really not just cross over to pop, but cross over into a space where white Americans can see that Black entertainers, they sit in the same space as everybody else when it comes to entertainment. You can no longer keep looking at Black entertainers as second tier or as a second thought. And so when they talk about him at the multi-platinum certification and how he wasn't starting until Jane Fonda came and presented him that award, like some people may say, oh, that's him pushing for white acceptance. I'm like, I don't see it that way. I see it more so as, yeah, y'all are going to stop playing in my face because I done outsold everybody out here. And y'all are still trying to put me in this compartment, but we're not going to do that because if you're going to do that to me and I sold all these records, imagine what you're going to do to everybody else that's still putting out this quality music, right? And so, no, we're not doing that. And so, you know, they kind of put an emphasis on, again, just how Thriller becoming the global phenomenon it became would help to ease a lot of the tension in regard to race and marketing and promotion when it comes to Black acts. We still run into those issues today, but we're in a space where, you know, Black acts aren't being, you know, pretty much uninvited to, well, I guess we don't even have music networks anymore, but just understand, by the time they start playing Billie Jean and Beat It, and Tina Turner drops Private Dancer album with What's Love Got to Do with It and the song Private Dancer. And, you know, by the time you also include, who else is out there? You know, Prince is crossing over because, you know, 1999 had a great run and now we're coming into Purple Rain and Purple Rain is becoming what it becomes. And then Whitney Houston comes out around 85 and, you know, her stuff is massive. You're starting to see MTV say, okay, we're not just rock and roll on TV. We're just music television. And then boom, here's the influx of everybody else that comes down the line. Right. And so understand that, to me, that was kind of that pioneering of kicking down a few additional doors, because the thing is, I always say when it comes to like Black music and the idea of crossing over is not about specifically just wanting to appeal to white people. If they don't like your stuff, so be it. Oh, well, we good over here. We can party amongst ourselves. However, when an album is able to cross over, that means the label sees that, okay, this is a viable act. And because they were able to sell what it was they sold, we're now going to put some money behind them. We're going to fund that music video they wanted to do. We're going to sponsor that tour they wanted to go on. You know, they were going to do some cute little tour. We were just going to have them go to a few urban markets and leave it at that. But you know what? Since they're doing really well, we're going to actually push them into secondary markets as well. So in addition to just going to Atlanta, New Orleans, and DC, you know, and New York, okay, they're going to go out further west. They're going to go to Denver. We're going to see how well their show does in Denver. We're going to see how well the show does in Phoenix and Seattle and Portland. And in addition to LA, they're even going to go to Sacramento, and because they got an arena over there too where the Kings play. Like, you know, so there's that. You know, and in addition to that, you know, now that you've done what you've done and you've crossed over, we're going to push you like the other acts. We're not just going to keep you in the urban box and you only get the urban budgeting, right? Because that's exactly how these labels move. And so, you know, that's why that idea of crossing over was so important, especially back then, because again, this is the emergence of the music video era. And if we didn't have those big pioneers, if you didn't have the Michaels and the Princes and Stevie was still out, and I don't know if I would consider Stevie a video act, even though he had a lot of videos at that time. But as far as just the visuals and what was being put out there, Stevie was already in his own caliber of success that is only Stevie can have. But, you know, if it weren't for those early pioneers of Black entertainers that really had to fight and claw to kick some doors down, I don't think music videos and visual entertainment would have become what it became as we got into the 90s. Because understand, like, pretty much the 90s was Black music galore. Black music was just mainstream. Black music was the pop music by then, right? If what happened in the 80s didn't take place, I don't think the 90s would have become the pinnacle of Black entertainment that it became. Right. And that also includes television. It includes movies. It includes fashion. It includes a lot of things. So understand that all of this ties together and comes back full circle. And so, yeah, they spent some time talking about, you know, just that, again, that pandemonium and the impact of Michael. And it's so crazy. Like, I remember at my grandma's house, because my cousin, when she lived at my grandma's house, mind you, we were little. My grandma had these two twin beds. In one of the bedrooms, it was the room that my mom and her three sisters used to sleep in. It was like two sisters to a bed. This is like the 70s. But And then next comes a generation, and now my cousin, that was her room. But I still remember she had these Michael Jackson stickers from the Thriller era that were all over the bed. Like I don't think they're there now. My grandma passed on, and I think they moved all the furniture out the house. But up when my grandma was still alive up until 2010, those same stickers from the Thriller era were still on that bed. Like it's just Michael was such a part of everybody's daily experience and conversation. Like it was crazy. And then the thing about that generational impact, like I said earlier, you know, my introduction to Michael is the latter half of the Bad era. That's kind of my earlier memories of music. But really, as far as me being able to remember a Michael Jackson era from start to finish, it would have been dangerous. But, you know, for like me, my generation, people who come after, like, just understand Michael is still a staple. I remember being like 3, 4, 5 years old. And the thing about the Thriller music video is that when you're that little, it's the scariest thing ever, but you couldn't stop watching. And so I remember like me and the cousins, we would just be in front of the TV and crying like, and I remember like my mom and dad were like, well, stop watching it, just stop watching it. But you couldn't stop because I mean, they're dancing and you didn't know what to do because it was so much going on, right? And so it just goes to show, like, even generationally, like, music can still have that impact over time, right? And we're kind of in a space where people are obsessed with the idea of just the now and F everything from before. But understand, when music is good, when music is timeless, it can fit for anybody. The craziest thing, even in my 11 years working with the kids, you know, I remember the craziest thing is they knew every Michael Jackson song. And I'm like, how do y'all know these? Like, and this is before I got there and started working with them. I'm like, they knew every song. And I didn't even realize it was still like carrying the same way it did. I knew it was going to carry with my generation. I mean, these are kids that are born in like 2006. 2007, right? And so these are kids that are born in an era where there is no VH1 giving music history anymore. BET is no longer really playing music videos. MTV is no longer really playing music videos. Radio is kind of repositioning itself. We're coming into an era where the music industry at that point is in a super strong decline, but that impact is still there. And those kids know everything about Michael Jackson. And then now we're on to the generation after them, and it's the same thing. Like, that is what you call impact. Right. So sometimes when people try to rewrite his legacy, and sometimes when you hear people say this person is the new no, we're not doing that. I've already said, I think it's fine to celebrate artists of the current era, especially when they make and have these great accolades. But I don't like the idea of comparing artists on like parallel spectrums where you try to measure up accolade tit for tat. Because at the end of the day, in most circumstances, if you're measuring anybody up against Michael tit for tat, a lot of times he's still going to win this argument, which is why I say, if you want to celebrate and look at artists, we should look at artists as a spectrum. Look at music as just this big giant plate, and you have all these artists that shine in their respective realms. And yes, there are artists that are similar or that do things similar, but every artist has something another artist doesn't, and so on and so forth. And I think when you constantly strive to try to push artists or create an artist to try to measure up against somebody else, you automatically chip away at the legacy that artists could have for themselves, because now every time you think of them, the only thing you can think of is how they're measured up against somebody else, and you don't really get to see them celebrated in the lane that they've been able to create for their self. So that's just how I feel on that. Let me see. I'm going to pause for a second, read some comments, and then we'll keep going. Let me see. What's my chat? Thank you, Tareen Radio. He said, one thing I like about Michael is how he was able to adapt to times and constantly reinvent himself flawlessly while not neglecting his old fans while gaining new ones. Which is one of the things I always say. I was always saying it in my music discussions. Like, I think as an act, when you're releasing a project, there should be like 3 main goals. 1, to appease the fans you already have. 2, to bring in new fans. And 3, to make sure you keep the attention of the general public. If you can do those 3 things, all is well. Sometimes an artist will come out and one of these things are missing. Maybe, you know, they're trying to appease new fans and keep the general interest of the public, but they forgot about home, right? And they done pissed off their original fan base. Now the new fan base they're not feeling it, right? One of my favorite artists, and I think of Shantae Moore. She's one of my favorite vocalists, but I always think of the Exposed album. If you follow somebody like a Shantae Moore, her earlier albums are very R&B, jazz, soulful, right? And so she has these beautiful albums and beautiful songs. Now that Love is taken over, and Precious, and Finding My Way Back to You, and I'm What You Need, and Thank You for Loving Me, and Soul Dance, and This Time, I could be here all day. Old School Loving. I love her song so much, right? And so by the time you get to This Moment Is Mine and she dropped Shantae's Got a Man, the album is still really nice. It still kind of fits along the realms of what her initial fans would want. And now there's the effort to bring in new fans, because the Shantae's Got a Man song is a bit more commercially appealing, and it has this cool melody. And because of the content of the song, it has a general interest of the public. Then we get to that next album, Exposed. And at this point, she goes straight up contemporary R&B. I love the album. It's a fun album. I love the song Straight Up and Take Care of Me and Bitter and Better Than Making Love. And there's a song called Man, like great album. But what ended up happening is that initial fan base kind of got abandoned because this was a very R&B hip hop album. And so that initial fan base that came for the more jazzy, soulful sounds was really pissed off when that album came out, to the point where I think she had a message board that got shut down. So, you know, she's still great. We love her. But again, just understanding that when you're coming out with a project, those are the three: appease the fans you already have, bring in new fans, and keep the interest of the general public. You always want to do those three. Michael was really good at doing that, right? Which is why his albums were always a movement. And even in the later years, every time he had a music video, it was an event. It wasn't just premiering on MTV. They're gonna show it on Fox. They're gonna show it on ABC. It was gonna show during the Super Bowl. Like it was just a thing. It was a time, right? I see Bellie's Gala's in here. Let me stop talking about Janet. Because she gonna come in here saying too much. The documentary we're talking about is called Thriller 40. Bellie's girl, you have been caught. I done found you. She and I had this ongoing beef for like the last 2 years on this channel. All right, let me see. Let's see. Somebody said, let's not forget white America stole rock and country music from. Listen, if we want to have that conversation, check out my Music Talks video, the one where I'm dragging the mess out of Jan Winter, because we had a great discussion on that. Thank you for sharing that, John, because that's a great conversation. Even the conversation of just how rock and roll got its name, it has some great interest and insight in it. Let me see. People say they love the song September. I love that too. Yeah, that's a good one. Thank you, Glow. Said, love your energy, music, knowledge. I appreciate it. Let's see. Belize God said, I remember that before Shazam. I think she's talking about when you're trying to whatchamacallit, when you're trying to find a song and you can't get it on the radio. Don't be muting my friend Whitney. She said, oh, I thought you were having a watch party. I thought I was too, and then I changed my mind. I just ended up watching it. I had tweeted that I was thinking about having a watch party, and then I was like, let me just go ahead and watch this thing and review it now, because I forgot my Sunday's going to be a little booked and I won't have time to do a live Sunday. Let's see. Let's see. Somebody said, I used to hate when they cut the song at the very end. I used to hate that. It would mess up a good thing every time. Let me see. What a time. Somebody said not the E40 Calvin. All right. Somebody said Tareen Rand Reloaded said Michael Jackson vocally as a child made some adults feel ashamed with their own vocals. I remember like Smokey Robinson even just talking about when the Jacksons dropped Who's Loving You, and just hearing the way Michael was able to emote and translate that song. Like, what? This is a 12-year-old thing like this? Like, man, I mean, even as an adult, when I be just kind of cleaning up and having the music playing and stuff, like, man, don't let Never Can Say Goodbye come on. I'm like, I can't even sing along because that's too high for me. You got to drop down an octave, and just give face. That was one thing we used to always be taught, like in the choir. Like if the note wasn't coming out, just give face and look like you know what you're doing, right? Lord, yeah, like Never Can Say Goodbye. That's a vocal there. Maybe Tomorrow. That's one of the underrated songs, in my opinion. But by the time you get to the end of that song, and Michael gets to that, I'm like, God, that boy used to sing. Maybe Tomorrow. Hallelujah Day was one where he really kind of goes in. Even the Christmas music, that dang Santa Claus is coming to town, he goes in, right? So, like, man, Belize, we ain't doing this with you today. I saw that comment you just posted. We ain't doing that. All right. Let's see. Somebody said the favorite Michael choreography came. I'm sorry, this is Stellar Avenger. My favorite MJ choreography is from the Underrated Ghost video. My favorite was always Smooth Criminal because I liked watching it live. That, and then when he did the medley, well, it was Dangerous, but it was Dangerous with a bunch of other songs. I always like that arrangement with Dangerous, where it's like the old Hollywood movie. He got the hat on, and it's really him just dancing for like 5 minutes. But I love that performance. That's like my favorite choreography. All right, we're gonna keep going because I got so much more I want to cover on here. Let's see. Why is this thing clicking? Okay. Yeah, Travis Dion Timon said Thriller probably is sold upwards of 100 million copies at this point. Like, there's some artists we're never gonna know what they sold. Even Selena Quintanilla, we'll never know what she actually sold because again, the rules with reporting weren't the same back then. So we'll never know how many records she sold internationally when we're talking about Latin America. But she was selling some major units in her era too before she passed. Um, um, We are not doing Prince slander tonight either. Y'all know Prince is one of my. Let me explain to y'all real quick. In this house here, the people that are off limits for slander: Michael, Janet, Prince, Whitney, Tony, and Mary J. All right, and Gladys. All right, don't play in their faces. And Patrice Rushen. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Let me see. Yeah, I have so many great comments in here. This is fun. This is why I can't ever get the videos done, because once I get in the comments, I can't ever finish what I'm supposed to be talking about. Okay, all right, I want to keep going. So they also just so they talk about even just the premiere of when Thriller came out, and like I said, that kind of set precedence to pretty much the rest of his videos. Every video he had up until that point, the premiere was an event. You know, the premiere for Bad would be an event. The premiere for every video was an event when it was premiered, right? And so, you know, it goes to show, even in when we got You Rock My World, that too was still an event years later. Like, that's just kind of the impact that was there. They talk about the Victory Tour and some of the logistics behind it. Now, I'm not going to lie. Of the Jackson tours, my favorite will always be Triumph. I think that's their best show, right? Victory is cool for the big staging and all, but Triumph for me is that show. That's the show right there. But they talk about how massive the Victory Tour was, right? As far as his solo tours, Bad is my favorite. That Bad will always be my favorite Michael tour solo. Dangerous was cool too, but Bad for me is the one. But they talk about how massive the Victory Tour is and just the Pandemonium and the stadium tours and everything. And that's why I was kind of side-eyeing a bit when they kept trying to say, like, you know, before Off the Wall, the Jacksons had fallen off. They had still been touring this entire time. Like, they never had stopped touring and had never really stopped being present. I will say with the Triumph Tour, by the time they got into the second leg of the Triumph Tour, Off the Wall was out. And so, you know, they ended up in bigger venues, because at that point they were doing a lot of amphitheaters and stuff. And so by the time Off the Wall had become Off the Wall, now they're back into big giant arenas and stuff like that. So, you know, that had to be tough to be one of the brothers or anybody else in the family at that point, where even if you're having success in your own realm, it just, to have to be on the stage with Michael Jackson at that time, oof. If I was one of them siblings, yeah, it's great because we all get a check, but I would have been annoyed. Especially if I had any solo material. And, you know that probably 90% of the crowd is there specifically for Michael. Oh, I would have felt some kind of way. Man, but, you know, again, I'm going to need them to release that version of the Victory Tour that they have, because that one is nice and crisp. Okay, I mean, HD, 4K. I'm like, why we don't got that? That's what I want. So, yeah, that would be very interesting here. What is it? Okay. Somebody sent me a message. And so, yeah, Victory Tour, cool tour. The album I wasn't crazy over. I'm not even gonna lie. Victory, I never really liked that album. And it's just mainly because Victory is like, they're already in different spaces. If you set through I shouldn't say set through Victory, but if you listen to Victory, it's like all of them have their own specific songs. There's not a lot of songs with them together. You can just tell they weren't really feeling each other when they put it together. Even the music videos. Like, I always think of, you know, the Torture video, right? Jermaine ain't there, Michael ain't there, and then they put that doll there to try to make it look like Michael, and it's the doll that's just standing while the other four are standing there. And I know Jermaine was pissed, like, so y'all, I don't get a doll? And it's like, nah, we ain't give you one. And then, you know, they have the Your Body song video. Girl, I want your body. Like, they got that song, and that's cool. Victory's all right for what it is, but Triumph is my favorite Jackson's album. Like, Triumph is that album. That's the one there. They talk about Pepsi and the fire, and, you know, him not wanting to be seen holding the Pepsi or drinking it and everything else like that. And it's kind of cool because that's when the first time you see Alfonso from Fresh Prince on there. You know, he's the little Michael in the video, which is pretty cool. And then of course they talk about the Grammys, right? The 84 Grammys and just how Michael just had a clean sweep. Like the album as a whole won like, I think it won all 12 nominations. I think before those were specifically for like production for like Quincy Jones, but Michael specifically won 8. I'd have to go back and double check that fact, but you know, it's a sweep. And the funniest thing with that, I always think of the clip of Angela Bofill when, you know, she was one of the singers from the era, but you know, she has to present the award, and then, you know, she is so pressed because she was a stan, right? She was in love with that man. And so when he won that award, he got to come on that stage, and you could see it in the documentary when he turns and there's that big old spot of lipstick on his face still, like when he gave her that nice little peck on the cheek, and she's back there just in heat while he's giving a speech, like just blushing. She couldn't hold it together. Just Michael Jackson just lost it. I die every time I see that clip. That is the funniest thing ever. Like Michael had that woman just shaking. She would have gave it all up that night if he wanted to, because Lord. And so that was really cool. And it's crazy because there's not even a performance from the Grammys. You would have thought he would have performed that time, but there wasn't even a performance. He just had that much weight. I'm like, man, that's crazy, right? But it just kind of really just shows again, Thriller is just, it's that project. So what I want to do is I'm going to go over the track listing and everything that with the production, just because again, they had a moment where they cover some of the songs and then they kind of just start talking about the era. And then there's some songs they just don't even talk about. So we're just going to go track by track. Let me pull, I already know the track listing by heart, but let me just pull it up just to make sure I don't skip something. And we're doing the original release. I'm not covering no additional releases that got 15 other songs that most of us didn't know until we looked them up and found them on the internet. So don't come on here talking about what about Streetwalker? We ain't going that far. All right. We talking about the main 9 songs. All right. All right. All right, Michael, let's see. So going into the album, just to make sure I have these right. All right, cool. I mean, half the album was a single anyway, but all right. So I love that they go into the production of all the albums and how they talk about everything. And hold on, I'm gonna read this comment real quick. Janessa Coleman said, I wish Michael and Prince had worked together. We almost had it with Bad, but Prince doesn't feel in the direction of Bad. I'll say this. I think sometimes, as much as I would have loved for that to be a thing, I still don't even know what that would have looked like. I think it would have been a great way to get the two fan bases to be cordial. Like people be thinking the whole Beyonce Rihanna beef was something serious, or who else beefs now? I don't know, 50 and Jaw back in the day, or you know, Nicki and Cardi. Like understand the beef between the fan bases of Michael and Prince is a vicious one. Like my God, they still be going in now. I'm like, y'all, let the two of them rest in peace. They be having the two people fighting in the afterlife. Like my God. But yeah. So as far as the track list, and they talk about Want to Be Starting Something, which I think is such a dope. Oh yeah, Whitney and Mariah, that's another one. Oh, the fan bases still be about to kill each other. Janet and Madonna, like the fan bases, and Britney and Christina, like the Backstreet Boys in sync, the fan bases like I'm in a space where I just like everybody. So I be having a great time enjoying everybody, be having a good time. But yeah, so Want to Be Starting Something, I think has always been a dope song, because for me, it's a song that's just like, I'm here. It's a production that sounds so different. It's just big, it's in your face. And that too is a song that just has never really died. It always sounds fresh. Even when you go to different weddings or functions, it's normally a song that ends up on the playlist. And it was even a song that a lot of times he would open his tours with. So, you know, he opened like the Bad tour with that one. And I think he opened Victory with that. Like, it's always been a great song. It's Want to Be Starting Something. I think the dope thing about Thriller as an album is every song sounds so different and they all bring something different to the table, right? So Want to Be Starting Something. And I think for me, one of the most underrated songs on the whole project, Baby Be Mine, like that is one of my favorite songs. It's like the one song that didn't get pushed as a single, pretty much. But I love that song. So Baby Be Mine, I love that. I just like it because it's a smooth, like pocket groove. To me, it's symbolic of just 80s funk. Great vocal, right? That's a good one. And it's just interesting how they initially rolled out this album with the marketing, right? But Baby Be Mine does not get its flowers. Like, I'll say this opinion when I get to that song, but just understand, Baby Be Mine, stop playing in Baby Be Mine's face. Getting to The Girl Is Mine. If you follow me, you know that this is my least favorite song on the album. Like, I understand why it was released. It's strategic, right? Again, we talk about the whole, what was happening with Black music and how Black music had been getting just gut punched during the Disco Sucks movement. And then even as the Disco Sucks era died, black music was still collateral up until almost the mid 1980s. And so the idea of releasing a very adult contemporary song that was safe and has Paul McCartney on it would guarantee that Michael could be able to cross over and not be ignored by mainstream radio. This is kind of the same approach that Lionel Richie would take during this time period. And even Stevie was kind of going this route as well. Diana was also going this route as well. At this point, as a black entertainer coming out of 1981 and 1982, if you weren't doing easy listening, adult contemporary, mainstream radio was not going to play you. Anything with a little extra extra funk, too much bass riff, automatically it was too black and it was associated with dance and disco music, and you got put back into the Disco Sucks bubble and we're not going to play it, right? Which, as another conversation, kind of in my opinion, is one of the reasons why you were able to segue into the emergence of Madonna, because Madonna was given a pass to make dance music because when we're talking about those early songs, so like the Everybody Dance and Holiday and all the stuff she did with Nile Rodgers on the Like a Virgin album that came afterwards, like all of those songs, and Lucky Star, these are dance songs. These are pretty much just R&B funk songs, right? Which is why a lot of her early singles charted on the R&B charts. And so by her being given that grace to have that kind of dance music that black entertainers at that point in time could not release because it would be ignored, it got into a space where that sound was again on the sound waves. And that too would open somewhat of a Pandora's box where now people weren't afraid to party and dance anymore, right? But anyway, getting back to my point. So The Girl Is Mine. I just have never been moved by that song. Now, I will say, watching it on this documentary almost made me like the song because I was like, okay, because you get to see them do the behind the scenes. You get to see, everything. I was like, all right, I guess the song's not that bad. It's not a bad song. I just don't like it. Like, even when they were playing the song Carousel, I was like, y'all should put Carousel on there and swapped it with The Girl Is Mine, right? But hey, The Girl Is Mine was a hit, right? It went to #1. But it just never does anything for me. For me, The Girl Is Mine is when you go to the dentist office and they have the music playing while you wait in the lobby and you look at that magazine that's been on the table for 8 months that's out of date, and they got the little toy for the kids to play with the blocks that go along the metal rods. I just feel like that's the song that's playing in the background. The doggone girl is mine. I'm like, wait a minute. Now, we just had to get on the floor on the last album. Michael, stop playing. Michael didn't even perform it. That's all. He didn't perform it. I'll tell you that. There's a reason why. But I guess. And I talked about remember, I think I put it in my So It Happened episode, but even the marketing commercial for it, like when they had the commercial ad for the Thriller album, they're like, Thriller from Michael Jackson, featuring the song The Girl Is Mine with Paul McCartney. I'm like, y'all done took all the spice out of this album. So yeah, that's not my song. I'm sorry, I don't like it. Y'all can fight me in the comments. My mind is never going to change. I said what I said. We still love Michael, but that's a song I am willing to sacrifice out of the catalog. All right. It's cool. It's just ain't for me, right? I don't purposely play it. The only time it comes on is if I let Thriller just play and I don't skip any songs. All right. And then of course the song Thriller. Thriller is great. I love that they had the portion where they showed how they built up the song with the drum loops and the drum kits. I thought that was really, really cool. Just to kind of see how songs are created and how songs are built, and just how Thriller has had such an extensive shelf life from production through release, even how it was initially going to be called Starlight. And, they just kept coming up with new ideas and new concepts to the point where, okay, now this is what it is. And if you've ever had a chance to listen to the stems and listen to that layering and that blending, especially when you get to the bridge, the bridge doesn't show up in the music video. They restructure the song specifically for the video where they just have them sing all the verses and then they get into the hook and then they do the dancing and go into the hook 2 more times and call it a night. But, the actual studio version of the song, there's the verses and hook and the verse and hook, and then that bridge is there. And when you get to that bridge and hear those stacked vocals, I'm like, man, it's heavenly, man. Such a great production. Beat It, of course, another great one. Now I will say this, with Michael's Thriller album is honestly probably the album I played the least, just because it was so massive. And even in the later years, like as I was coming up, you still heard it so much that a lot of times you heard the song so much you don't even want to hear them anymore. And I have to sometimes sit and remind myself of just how great these songs are. You just get so used to always hearing them that you forget just how much of a masterpiece these songs are, especially when we're talking sonically. They were just so big. You sometimes just hear them so much. It's kind of like a Whitney Houston, I Will Always Love You. Whitney's one of my faves. I probably never play that song though, but every now and then it'll come on. I'm like, this is such a good song, but you just forget because when it was out, I mean, you couldn't escape the song. I was like at the wedding, at somebody's funeral, at the baseball game, at the grocery store, at the PTA meeting, they got it playing. I just everywhere you went, you couldn't escape that song, right? And so that's kind of like what ends up happening with like Billie Jean and Beat It and Thriller, the songs. But you know, it comes with the territory. But yeah, so Thriller's a great one, and then again, Beat It, the song. I love the backstory about the guitar riffs. I love the stories just about the production. I love that they play the stems and you hear the acapella and the aggression and just the approach. Like that's the cool thing too with the album. You hear his different approach on all the songs. The vocal approach on Beat It is very different from the vocal approach on The Girl Is Mine. They also talk about the fact that The Girl Is Mine is one of those first songs from the Thriller sessions, and then they take a break and then they come back later and we get the other songs. And so, you know, you just hear a different approach. Wanna Be Starting Something has a very different approach from, you know, Baby Be Mine. PYT is in its own lane. So that's the cool aspect. Human Nature, which we'll get to all of those. So yeah. Then there's Billie Jean. Now, for me, my two favorite songs on the album are always going to be PYT and Baby Be Mine. But personally, if I could say what the gem on the album is that always pulls everybody in sonically, to me, it's Billie Jean. And it's always been Billie Jean because again, it's such a simple production, right? It's literally just the kick drum and and then just a few little bits and tidbits here, but there's something about it that just pulls you in. Like I don't remember the first time I heard that song, but I do remember being young and every time it came on, I just thought it sounded so good. And it was something that just made you want to dance right away. And then if you grew up and you remember the images of Michael Jackson, and you already had those images in your head. When that song came on, you just knew what to do. You just knew right away. You were like 4 years old. Just be ready, right? And so Billie Jean, and it's so crazy because they talk about how, you know, when they had to go do the mixing, they came out with mix after mix after mix. I mean, I forgot how many mixes they did. Either it was like 40 something or 80 something. But after all of that, they ended up going with the second mix. But just the production of that song, there's something about it that just pulls people in. And it's so crazy because again, it's such a simple production. It's not even overproduced, right? And then you bring in the vocals and everything else like that. And it's just a song that has carried through generation. Like even when you're talking about the imaging, people always see, you know, Michael with the hat and the black and the white on and the glove and the black shoes and the white. That's Billie Jean. That's the Billie Jean imaging, right? And so Billie Jean to me is the gem on the album that to me is the heart of the project, right? There's all the great songs that are on there, but I think the heart of that album is Billie Jean and has always been. I think, yes, people are always going to remember the Thriller video, but when we're talking sonically and you just talk about what is that song that right when it comes on, people just lose their mind. To me, it was always Billie Jean. And I think the close second would have been Beat It. But yeah, Billie Jean it's Billie Jean. Human Nature. I love that they talk about Human Nature briefly, but you know, they talk about like Total in the production. I always like Total. They had the original version of Georgie Porgy. I like the Faith Evans and Eric Benet remake of that song as well. But you know, they talk about just the creation of that song. And this is when I wish there were some bits that were longer, because at first they were doing such a great job of giving the dynamics of how all these songs were crafted. And then towards the end, like Human Nature, they zipped right through the production of that song. I'm like, wait, Human Nature, wait a minute. Now, Human Nature is a gem now. Like that is one where, again, when you want to talk about timeless, you know, that's a song that's never going to sound old. And then again, I felt like for my generation, there was a resurgence and an appreciation for the song when SWV had the Right Here Human Nature remix. That just kind of brought that sample right back out. And then people almost got reintroduced to the original song, right? And then it's almost like it had another set of legs again later down the line because other artists have also utilized and sampled that song. But even when you watch like his concert tours, whether it be, you know, specifically the Bad Tour, like when you watch him go into Human Nature, for some reason, like, even with all the pandemonium when Michael is on stage, when he gets to Human Nature, there's something about that song that just makes the whole crowd kind of just bring it all down and just sit in the moment with Michael as he's going through this song, right? Human Nature to me is that's one of the greatest songs in his catalog, in my opinion. I even like, I don't know if this was released during the era or if this is fan made, but on YouTube, it's not a video treatment. It's like a 30-second cartoon of Michael walking down the sidewalk and it keeps re-looping. I even like that little thing that plays when you search up Human Nature and that plays. I don't know the origin of where that's from, but I enjoy that thing too. Now, listen, my favorite song, PYT. They didn't even talk about it on the album. I was about to fight everybody in the documentary. I said, y'all gonna stop playing. Like PYT, to me, I wish it had a video. Like that is a song that I think still has a very fresh sound, right? Love that one. I even like the demo version, which, you know, the demo version is a slow, it's like a slow groove. It's not even the same kind of production, but PYT is just, it's a fun song. And vocally, to me, PYT sounds like it could have also been on Off the Wall. Like, I think the first time I heard PYT, I thought it was from the Off the Wall era. I didn't even realize it was on Thriller. Like, PYT to me symbolizes the greatness of just that 80s funk sound in R&B, right? And I wish there was a video for that song. Yeah, if there was one additional video for the Thriller album, for me, it would have been PYT. A lot of folks always say they would have loved the Human Nature video, which is cool, but I wanted PYT. Like, PYT still goes hard today. I be playing that one all the time, right? That's on my feel-good playlist. PYT is so good. So good, man. Such a good one. I wish he would have performed it because he didn't really ever perform that song, but that one there, that's a fun one. Like, PYT is very underrated in my opinion. Love that one. And then of course you have The Lady in My Life, which I don't even think they talked about that song either, which again, like, that's a great one as well. They didn't really talk about that song at all. Now that I think about it, I don't think they even referenced it. It's crazy because, like, when you look at the album, like, this is an album where everybody knows every song on the project. If there's one song that people may not be familiar with, sometimes it's Baby Be Mine, because whatever. But, you know, again, this is an album where every song has a connection to the general public, even songs that weren't singles, right? Great album. I'm gonna go to reading some comments here. Let's see here. We'll read some comments and chop it up until we call it a night. Yeah, why are y'all cooking Bellie's gal? Let me see. She's still talking about my fave. Anyway, Monique 2825 said, I was born when he was with the Jackson 5, LOL. Sometimes I do wish I could just time travel and kind of be around for certain eras in music, just because, like, I there's some moments I wish I could have experienced. I'm like, man, I mean, I still got to enjoy some great times because I got to at least live through all of the 90s, and, you know, all of the greats were still alive at some point. So I still got to be a child in the era where James Brown and Aretha Franklin and Prince and Michael and Patty and all of these big giant names, and some of the Temptations, in addition to Otis, were still alive. Like, you know, I was around for at least that, and it was just normal to see these people on TV all the time. So that part I appreciate, but it would have been really cool. I would have loved to have been around in the underground emergence of hip hop and have been at some of those parties. I would have loved to have been at that. I ain't gonna lie, I probably would have been in Studio 54 coked out like the rest of them because they ain't realized cocaine was terrible yet. Like, I don't do coke and I'm not endorsing drugs. I'm just saying I probably would have been in parties having a good time. Like, I would have loved to just time travel, to experience like the Motown eras and all of that, and go and see some of these tours. I'm good on Woodstock. I don't think I would have wanted to go to that. Y'all can have that one. But yeah, there's some moments I just wish I could have been around for, but, you know, I'm grateful to be in the space that I'm in. Oh yeah, Ben. Okay, y'all, this is in regard to Michael vocally. Ben, that's another one. Michael does his singing. Let me see here. Let's see. Oh, Byron, Want to Be Where You Are. That might be the pinnacle Michael vocal right there. By the time you get to the end and it's the I wanna be, like, Michael is singing. Like, sing, boy. You ever like just you playing somebody and they just go, you have to sing. You have to just stop. Sing that. You gotta start it over, right? That is some singing. Oh, that's a good point, Jalil Mason, because I've always felt the same way. He said, I'm surprised Funny How Time Flies doesn't have sample credits from Lady in My Life. Because to me, yeah, Funny How Time Flies Off Control, to me, is the cousin of Lady in My Life. Those songs are cousins to me. They got some similarities there. I can see that, yeah. Even the idea of those being the last songs on the album and kind of bringing the albums down after all these party tracks, yeah. It's in the bloodline. Let's see. Yeah, Belize gal said smooth criminal with the forward lean. Like smooth, every performance of Smooth Criminal, I go up for. It don't matter what tour it is. I always loved it. And Smooth Criminal only got better with each tour. Like, but I love those early ones. My favorite one though, it's the Bad Tour in I think Rome. That's my favorite Smooth Criminal performance. I love that one. Let me see. Like I said, I guess Dangerous is going to be the next doc, which ironically, the 30th year passed 2 years ago. Now, listen, when I got into my Michael Jackson bag, it was when Dangerous was out. Like, you couldn't tell me nothing about Michael Jackson. Dangerous still is one of my favorite albums, just period. Like, the choreographer and dancer in me has such an appreciation for that album because that album, for people that like performance, like it's just dang, man, you can cut a rug to that album, man. I used to just be, especially when I was still teaching and coaching, that album would be one of my go-tos when I needed to just get ideas and think of stuff. Like once I put on Jam, because Jam alone, and mind you, that's the first song on the album. Like Jam, it just starts playing, and by the time those trumpets and the brass section comes in there, I mean, they don't even put jam sessions in music no more. Like there's just moments in that song where it's just instruments playing. Like Jam just sounds fresh to me. I don't understand why it wasn't a bigger hit. It was still a hit, but to me, Jam should have been bigger. But yeah, Jam is the gem. And then Why You Want to Trip on Me? She Drives Me Wild. That's my album, man. I love that album. I remember I used to just sit and look at and stare at the album cover as a kid because there was so much going on in it. I just used to sit and stare. There's like two album covers that I used to always just stare at or look through the booklet. TLC's Crazy Sexy Cool. It's crazy because it's the most simple photography, but for some reason I just think they're just so beautiful in those pictures. And I just something about that red cover. I remember how massive it was. So I remember being little and just kind of like scrolling. This is when you used to look through the album booklets and you'd open a CD and that had that smell. The paper had that smell. I would just sit. And then when you look at the pictures, when they had like those sacks on and they have the real natural look, I used to just stare at their faces because I thought the three of them were so pretty and they all were so different looking. Like as far as the looks, Steve Oz, Left Eye, and Chili all have such their own distinctive look. Sometimes you can have a group with a lot of really pretty women, but they all kind of somewhat have a similar look. But those three, to me, just all look so different. They were so pretty. So I used to spend a lot of time just looking at the cover. And then with Dangerous, because the Dangerous cover just had so much stuff going on it, I used to be turning that thing sideways, and you used to be looking at that thing because I don't even think I was in kindergarten when Dangerous came out. I was in preschool, so like, yeah, that was an album I used to just stare at. All right, let me see. Believes we are not coming after Mary either. All right, you about to be. You will not be getting a Christmas card. You will not. Lord, don't play in Mary's face either. Let's see. Yeah, they didn't even perform any of the songs off Victory on the Victory tour. They didn't even feel that album. That they was just playing around. Let me see. I like this really. I agree. Well, I don't know if I 100% agree, but I hear it. Like Jermaine would have been remembered as a main R&B dude in the 90s if his siblings weren't Michael and Janet. Because that's the thing. Jermaine actually had a pretty decent run in music, but the problem was, he had a great run, especially in R&B. But because Michael was so massive and Janet had really crossed over, it's kind of like he gets left in the shadows a bit. But Jermaine had some gems. Like I always loved Don't Take It Personal, even though that's in the later half of the career. Like I thought Don't Take It Personal was a jam. Even Monica samples that on her album, right? Dynamite I thought was a fun song. I Tickle Your Fancy with Devo is a nice little funky song. I said, let me tickle your fancy. Let me tickle. And they got that one performance where it's Rebe and LaToya on the backgrounds. I used to like that one. What else did they got? Why don't you do what you do? Whatever that song was. I like that one too. He had a few that were okay. Let's Get Serious was cool. Yeah, he had a few. Yeah. I can't think of nothing else. I ran out of stuff to think of. But yeah. I didn't care for his duets with Whitney, but I liked some of his other stuff. Actually, all the Jacksons pretty much had released something at some point in time. If there's any other Jackson that had music that I liked, I actually like what Randy was doing with the Gypsies because I love the song "Love You, Honey." You know, I do love you, honey. Love you, honey. It's true. I used to love that song. That was a good one. Perpetrators. You know, Reba got Centipede. I used to love Centipede until I realized it was Martha Wash doing the ad libs at the end. I thought that was Reba the whole time. I said, wait, that's not Reba, that's Martha. So it made me look at Centipede real different. But I did like her Faithfully song. Oddly enough, LaToya has a song or two that I like. There's a song called You Blue that I like. Full Force did all the production on it. I do wish somebody else sang it, but I still like the song. What else does she have? She has a song called Player. It's years later. This is like the 2000s. It's very bubblegum cheesy, but I thought it was actually kind of entertaining. I liked it. I like the Play Toy song. That was okay. What else did she have? I mean, LaToya got a song or two that's okay. Camp Kuchikaya. I like that song. I never took her as seriously as the other siblings, but I thought she had some okay songs in the catalog. She just, to me, wasn't a strong performer, but there was some decent songs in the catalog. Who else? Who else has something out of the mix there? Tito I think he released an instrumental album some years back. I never could get into Marlon's solo work, but you know, he had an album come out, I think in '87 that was okay. Jackie had a song or two that came out. I don't remember what they were called. Who am I skipping? Reby, Jackie, Tito, Jermaine, LaToya, Marlon, Michael, Randy. I think I said everybody. Okay. Anyway, let's see. Oh, the Marlon song, One More Chance. That's the one. But no, One More Chance was Randy. Randy, and who did One More Chance? Janet also did it too. I think that was Randy's song. I think Randy did it. I don't know if Marlon did it. Let me look that up. Which Jackson had One More Chance? One More Chance. Let's see. Is it Randy or Marlon? Or is it just the Jackson? Oh, it is Randy. Yeah, it's Randy singing that. Okay. All right. Let me see. Somebody said we should do a Thriller flash mob, meet in DC Lincoln Memorial in full costume. Y'all go ahead. Tell me how it was. I'm past the flash mob era, but y'all go ahead. Have a good time. I'll support you. Man. Yeah. If I were to do a flash mob, I don't think it would be the Thriller routine. That's fun, but I mean, maybe one of those days. I know, like they always do that around Halloween. That would be fun to do. But if I do a flash mob, we about to do some choreo. We about to spin on our heads and stuff, right? Let's see. Somebody said, "Oh, they keep trying to." Oh, this is when we're talking about the different beefs between the fan bases. Somebody was talking about what Beyonce and Taylor Swift. That's a weird beef because they're two different caliber artists in regard to what it is that they do, and they're not even really the same generation. Yes, they're out at the same time, but I wouldn't see them as peers at all. Oh, okay. Somebody said Michael didn't perform at the Grammys because this is shortly after the Pepsi incident. That makes sense. And the painkillers and everything. Head was probably hurting. He said, I ain't about to be out here dancing. Like, man. Dang it. Why did I just close that? I need that back open. I just closed my chat for some reason. I will just pull up the chat on my thing here. I just pulled the chat on YouTube. My bad. I did that on the last live too. I'd be trying to close something, then I end up closing my chat. So let's see where we're at here. Let me search myself. All right, Calvin Michaels. Oh, look, there I am. All right, let's see what's left in the chat. Now I got to sit through an ad on my own video. YouTube is trying it with these ads. Okay. Let me go back to where you guys were talking. Let's see. We're at. Scroll up some. Dang, man, I missed all. That means I'm gonna miss half the comments because it's not gonna take me to where I want to go. But I'll just keep going from here. Let's see. Damn, I need that part on there. I can come back. Somebody was talking about the Dangerous cover. Somebody said what was great about TLC is each of them had their own distinctive albums in their 90s. Let's see. The album cover for Dangerous is amazing. The outro and Remember the Time is fire. That used to scare me in the video when the guy was the fire eater. because I didn't realize that was a thing people could do. So that was throwing me way off. I was like, people can do that. Let me see. Do What You Do. That's the name of the Jermaine song I was talking about. Let's see. Somebody said, "Tell Me I'm Not Dreaming" probably would have been a top 5 hit if Epic allowed it to be a proper single. All right. Let's see. Yeah, H. Dennis, I didn't know Martha Wash was on Centipede. I said, wait a minute. This whole time I thought that was Reby doing all that growling in the background. That wasn't even her. The hurt. I had to rearrange my top vocalist out of the Jackson sisters. had to move some things around. Let me see. Yes, there's a song called Camp Kuchikaya. It's off LaToya's, I think, second album. You know, LaToya got like 10, 11 albums, right? It's actually a nice little song. Let me see. But it's not what you think it's about. It's not. It does sound like you naming a body part, but it's not that. I promise it's not. Let me see. Somebody said LaToya had one of the funniest reality shows ever. I didn't really get to watch that show, but I enjoyed her on Celebrity Apprentice. That to me was funny. Especially when her and Omarosa were going at it. Did y'all like Jafar Jackson's song Got Me Saying? The song was actually decent. Don't know if he ever dropped the album. I don't know his music, but I have heard Austin Brown's music. Austin Brown is, I think, Reeby's son. He had a few songs that I thought were pretty good. Let's see. Thank you, J Smooth 72. The Jacksons lead by Randy did One More Chance. Okay, so there we go. Let me see. Tykel Williams said it would be nice if Whitney and Prince Estates did album documentaries. I think at some point I think for Prince at some point we'll get that. With Whitney, because they're always so pressed to only talk about her personal life, they never really just want to sit and harp on the music. But I think you could really have some great documentaries with the Whitney projects, especially when you're talking about like the debut, the follow-up, the Bodyguard soundtrack. Like you could have some great commentary about Whitney Houston stuff. Man, let's see. Let's see. Oh yeah, 3T. They were okay. I only knew their song Why. That was the only one I knew from them. I'm so mad. I don't know what I did with this chat. I'm gonna figure out how to put this chat back because I want to see everything here. Let's see here. If I can keep going, I'm gonna leave that alone before I mess this live up. All right. Anyway, I'm just gonna leave it alone because I don't want to mess up nothing, and then we can't get back. But yeah. So overall, the documentary to me. Documentary was cool. I do wish there was a little bit more, just because again it's Thriller. Like this is the greatest selling album of all time. So I need the documentary to have that same to it. That's all I'm saying. I think you get enough, but I would have loved for there to be more. Let's see. So we'll chop it up for a few more minutes. I'm gonna just read the chat here and then we'll call it a night. And then those, like I said, the next book club session is December 18th, 9 p.m. We're reading The Short and Tragic Life of Robert Peace, and we're doing the last 5 chapters and finishing the book. Let me see. Oh yeah, let's not forget MJ signed Brownstone and Tatiana Ali. Y'all know Brownstone is one of my favorites. Like y'all know Brown, they go in too. That 5 Miles to Empty, and they got a few. They got a song Baby Love I really like, and there's another one You Give Good Love that I really like too. Like they are. They used to sing. They used to sound like a church choir to me though, because they would stack and overdub the big vocals on top of it, so it sounded like 30 people were singing. Let's see. Somebody said it should have been 3 hours at least. That's why I was saying it would have made more sense to go back to the idea of like a series, right? That has a few episodes as opposed to trying to put it in one sitting. Because I just think there's so much you could say. Like I said, there's so much that could be covered. Let's see here. I do like Stranger in Moscow. That's a great song. What I will say what I appreciated about the History album is it's a lot more in-depth where the songs are a bit more personal, right? Earth Song is one of my favorite videos of his. I love that video. I thought that was a great video. Let me see. Somebody said Michael's best vocal is on Too Good to Be True. Tell Me I'm Not Dreaming. Somebody fight me. All right. He said he want to fight. I like that vocal too. Yeah. I enjoy music. I would love to Let me see. Somebody sent a super chat. Let's see. Jalil, you're going to have to send me what you sent again because once, for some reason, I closed my chat out on this side. So send me the comment again because I can't see it on this version here because my chat can only go up so far backwards. Don't send the super chat. You ain't got to just send me the comment again. Let me see. I did not, so send it again. Oh yeah, I forgot all about I'll Be There. Duh, that's a great vocal. Say is a fun song with Paul McCartney. Even Say had more kick than The Girl Is Mine. You see what I'm talking about? But I get it. Again, the purpose was each song was supposed to serve a different purpose. So The Girl Is Mine has its purpose. It's just, to me, I'm sure, because he recorded a bunch of songs. I know there had to be at least one other song in there that could have probably swapped it up. And you could have still called Paul to duet, but I just needed some with some oomph to it. Like, man. Let us see here. I think we talked about Nighttime Lover. That's Latoya, I think. Janae Stewart said 50 Cent is very disrespectful towards Michael Jackson. A whole lot of people are. And 50 Cent is disrespectful to everybody anyway. 50, every time you turn around, he's bothering somebody. It is one of the sad aspects of the industry. I will say, the bigger you get, the more critics you're going to have, the more people who got something to say about you, and the more people who try to take you down. And you definitely see that with Michael. There's constantly been efforts to try to take down this man's legacy, right? And they really tried it with that Leaving Neverland documentary, which is so crazy because you came out with a documentary that wasn't even vetted. Then the majority of the information ended up being seam ripped and fact checked to the point where it's like, yeah, y'all tried it with that crap. Let's see. The realist said The Girl Is Mine is better than Say. I got to go back and revisit the two songs again. Honestly, like I said, though, but by watching it tonight, I was like, okay, The Girl Is Mine is not that bad. It's not as bad as I painted it out to be, but all right. Do you think if Reby took music more seriously, she could have had a good music career in the mid-90s? I think she could have gone the Angela Winbush route, because by then Angela had like Treat You Right in the mid-90s and she was still kind of up there. I don't know, because she has 4 albums. But I think there's just too much time in between the albums, and it just wasn't that connection. I don't know if she would have had like a massive career, but maybe she might have had somewhat of a decent run with the adult R&B market in the 90s. Yeah, I just don't think there were any labels that were really pushing her in that realm. Okay, Jalil said, would you prefer a Jackson's tour with Janet as an opener and MJ's? Okay, I gotta read this again. All right, where's my glasses? Would you have preferred a Jackson's tour with Janet as the opener and an MJ segment in between over the This Is It tour? Janet was trying to plan it around 08, but Michael was hesitant. I wanted the This Is It tour. Like, I love all the Jacksons, but I like them in their own pockets. Like, it would have been cool to do like a whole family thing with everybody, but I think too big of egos in the room with management. And I'm saying that just based on watching the Janet doc and when she talked about the experience during the Scream video and just how the teams and the management, how just chaotic it was. And I think trying to have Reby and Latoya would have been apart, but having 7 of them in a show together, I don't know how it would have gone. I think it would have been cool. I just think Janet's career was so massive. Her being an opener, which I get it. Michael's the bigger artist. I don't know. I don't know if I would have liked the show. I mean, I would like the show, but I don't know if I would have enjoyed the whole thing. I don't know. Maybe if it was like a one night only kind of special, sure. A full tour, I wanted to This Is It, because Michael hadn't toured the US since the freaking bad tour. The Dangerous leg got canceled, and then History never came to the US. And then yeah, it was time. I was ready to see Michael, and there were rumors at the time like, okay, he was going to eventually possibly move the show and start touring. I couldn't wait because I knew I couldn't afford to go to the UK, and because I was in college at the time, but I was excited for This Is It. Like, I still remember that day vividly. It was a Thursday, and I just came out of my business law class because I was doing a summer session at Howard, and I was like, y'all got to be kidding me. I know this is some nonsense. I know this. He better be undead. Like, man, that was a time. Oh, I don't even want to revisit that day. Goodness. Let's see. Did anyone mention The Way You Make Me Feel? If you're talking about vocals, yeah, that's a contender. I love that video too. That's a fun video. Skywin said, no, they should have their own shows. Janet and Mike's catalogs are too vast by themselves for the set list to be fulfilling. That's my thing. I just feel like they have to, it's too much of a good thing sometimes, right? Yeah, that would be, because again, Janet by herself can have a 2.5 hour show. Michael by himself can have a 2.5 hour show. The Jacksons, if they only did their material and not any Michael solo work or any solo work of the other brothers, they too could have like a 2.5 hour show. So it's kind of like, man, that's hard. And I think what would happen is folks would complain, you didn't get enough of this artist, or this artist didn't get enough, or this artist didn't get enough. It kind of like even when you had like the Michael or the Jacksons 30th anniversary special, and as great as it was, a lot of people were pissed because they felt like they didn't get enough Michael. You know, Michael did a handful of songs, or some people felt they didn't get enough of the Jacksons together, you know, and so some people didn't want to see any of those additional acts that were on the ticket. They just wanted the Jacksons and Michael. So yeah, I think sometimes too many people is, I don't know how it would have worked. Let's see. Yeah, The Way You Make Me Feel does kind of sound like Michael vocally on Thriller. Yeah. Let me tell y'all the great Soulful. I got a story for y'all. Soulful said, Calvin, the next time you come here to New York, please come see the MJ on Broadway. You'll enjoy it. Story time. So when was this? This had to be April. Either April or May of 2022, right? So May of 2022 was when I transitioned out of my old work as far as me running a community center. Like, I did that for 11 years. I had transitioned out and I was starting my new role. And I had tickets to go to New York and see Michael on Broadway. And so just as I was packing up, because I was going to stay up there for 2 days, I had just also gotten my wisdom teeth taken out on the right side like 2 days before. Like, I barely really should have been going nowhere, but just got the wisdom teeth taken out. I'm still popping the leftover medicine and all. And I was like, let me take a COVID test before I go, just to make sure I don't have nothing, because it was going to be like a group of us that were all going to be there. And so I take the COVID test and I have COVID. I'm like, what the heck? What the? Like, because I didn't have any like symptoms or anything. My nose was like running a little bit. And I was just attesting that to the dental work or whatever they were doing. I didn't even think of anything like that. And so I had COVID. I'm like, nah, I can't go. And then it was so crazy because then I had told, well, she's not my ex-coworker, but at the time I told her, like, you will not believe it, man, I got COVID. And she was like, what? And so she's flipping out. But let me tell you why she was flipping out. I had no idea about this, but they had planned this big, elaborate going away party for me at the center. And what they ended up doing, they got all of my old kids, the kids that are now like 25, 26, 27. They had got all of them. If you listen to the podcast, you know, these are like those people we kind of reference. So they had got my old kids. They had gotten old coworkers that didn't work in the company anymore. And people from the community, different parents. Like, I mean, they planned this big, elaborate party, massive, right? And it was going to be a surprise. And the plan was they were going to somehow find a way to get me over, to the center to enjoy this massive party for me. But nobody knew that I was going to New York because I do real spontaneous things. Like, so even when I reviewed the Beyonce Renaissance thing like last night. I just spontaneously went to the movie theater at almost like 11 p.m. last minute. I had a meeting that ended early. And I was like, oh, let me just see this movie because I want to review it. And I want to go when nobody's at the theater because I know if I go with the big crowd, they're going to be in there doing the Cuff It Challenge and everything else. And I actually just want to really see the production because I didn't get to go to the show. But anyway, so my coworker is flipping out because she's like, I just planned this big old party for this guy and now I got to cancel it. So my going away surprise party had to get canceled. And so I didn't get to go to the Broadway show and I did not get a party. I was like, dang, freaking sucks. What a time. But I had tickets and and this was before they switched because I think the Michaels have switched at this point. And mind you, I got them tickets a long I got a good deal with the tickets because by the time the Oscars had come on, everybody was trying to get tickets. And I don't know what kind of plug I had, but I was able to get some tickets because at that point there was a wait list for the show. Like, man. But maybe I'll catch it at some point. Somebody say, you crazy. Jermaine and Whitney has some hot collabs. Listen to Shock Me and Taking Care of My Heart. Let me tell you the Jermaine and Whitney song that I would have wanted. And they recorded it, but it was never released. Saida Garrett and Dennis Edwards. What's that song called? Oh my God. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Let me go to the chat. When y'all know it? Don't look any further. Jermaine and Whitney recorded that, and it didn't get released because they ended up using it with Dennis Edwards and Saida Garrett. Like, I would have loved to get that with Whitney and Jermaine. Like there's a few snippets of them in the studio recording it, but I know that would have been a banger. I would have loved that. I like the Dennis Edwards song. That's cool, but actually that is a classic. But man, oh wait, was that Saida Garrett on that or is it somebody else? Let me make sure I got these facts right. I'd be mixing up some of these people. Don't look any further. I just want to make sure I got the right person. Yeah, okay, it is Saida Garrett. Okay, just making sure. Sometimes I'll be mixing some people up. All right. Somebody said, No Name Face said, it's the video and him chewing for me. Well, the crazy part is I learned he wasn't chewing nothing. That was just coke jaw. You know, when people be doing that cocaine and that jaw, they can't keep that jaw still. So it looks like he's chewing gum. I thought he was chewing gum. They're like, no, that's coke. I'm like, oh, Lord. Okay, Dennis. By the way, speaking of Dennis Edwards, if you want to hear a super, super great vocal, go back and listen to The Temptations. And they got a song called Power that came out in the 80s. Like, that is a vocal there. I think that's his best vocal with The Temptations. Like, man. Yeah, y'all, I was pissed about that. I said, and I had been good. I had never caught COVID. I had been following everything. I don't even know. I swear I got it from the dentist. I swear the dentist gave it to me because I was an avid mask wearer. I was not playing with that crap. I ain't want to be around nobody. Yeah, I was in the house for a good minute, but whatever. Fortunately, I didn't have a bad case of it at all. Like I didn't even know I had it. Something told me just take a test just to be sure because you're going to a bigger city. You're about to be hanging with friends. You're going to be around folks. Make sure you're not spreading stuff to folks. So I'm glad I ended up checking because let's just say I had a worser version and then I got sick and I wasn't even home and I wasn't by my specific doctors and stuff. That would have been crazy. So they had switched roles in April. Oh, April. Okay, so I would have already had the different Michael anyway. All right. Let's see. Somebody said, I will still pay for a hologram performance as long as there's no glitches or technical difficulties. The only hologram show I would see is if the hologram was actually of the artist. What I initially thought they were doing when they were doing these holograms was like they were finding ways to actually use footage of these different artists and then create a hologram there, and it was really them. I hated that Billboard Awards performance where they did the Slave to the Rhythm performance with the Michael hologram, and it really wasn't like a Michael hologram. It was like an impersonator in 3D just on the stage. I hated that performance so much. And I'm only saying that because it's like, yeah, and it makes me think of even the Whitney hologram shows that they were doing right before COVID came, where I'm like, y'all just doing anything. They had Whitney looking like 5 different eras in one. She got on like she would have on the 1990 wig with a 1998 coat and some 1991 shoes. And I'm like, y'all, and just mixing everything up, just money grabs. I hated it so much. Like, I couldn't stand it. And then it wasn't even like they used like live vocals from other performances. They just had like CD vocals playing with a band for a lot of the songs. I was like, y'all are, and then people all in line to go to it. I was like, all right. You're like, whatever. Somebody said that was the Omicron variant working its way through the city. When I tell you I was so pissed, I mean, literally, I had the suitcase. I was about to roll and head on to, because New York's just up the street. Just take the train, right? I don't drive up there because you tear up your shocks in your car driving to New York if you ain't from there. And so, yeah, I literally had the little suitcase right there. I said, let me take a quick COVID test real quick. And, I got this little results waiting. I'm moving around. All right. What? I had to look at the instructions. Am I reading this right now? Oh, hell. So pissed. Whatever. Somebody said you have AI now, which that's going to be a problem too. AI is getting on my nerves as well. I don't like it. Don't like it at all. Don't like it. No me gusta. No me gusta. No. Is it weird that I like when Michael performed his solo music with his brothers because I like the harmonies better than his solo tours? I kind of agree to an extent. Yeah, because even on Bad, some of them songs sound a little. I don't like what Sheryl Crow was doing on Billie Jean. I was like, Sheryl, what you doing? Like that was weird. Now there were other parts where they were getting it in, like when they do You Are My Lovely One on the Bad tour. Now that pocket, them background thing, they were killing that. I'm down with that. They were getting it in. That hey, say what, hey, like they were killing that. I was like, now that's how you get it in. But when they got to Billie Jean and Sheryl Crow got to that's exactly how she sounded. I'm like, what in the hell? What is going on here? Like, please go back and watch that and listen to Sheryl while Michael's trying to sing his part. Like, because she's trying to do like the echoes while Michael's doing like the people love us told me, be careful what you do. And you know how Michael's doing like the extra backgrounds on the studio version. She's trying to match those, but the camera like pans on her face. I'm specifically speaking of the Japan show in what's it, Yo, it started with a Y, Yokohama, something like that. And they pan the Sheryl Crow's face. She's, I said, what's going on here? Who authorized this? But oh yeah, like man, Yokohama, that's what it's called. Yeah, I didn't like that. But yeah, Lovely One, that they killed that on the Bad tour. Lovely One and Things I Do for You are two of my favorite performances off the Bad tour, as far as songs that were from the Jacksons and not Michael solo. Like man. All right, this has been really, really dope. I think we're gonna wind down in a minute. Appreciate y'all for rocking with me. So yeah, for those who haven't seen the documentary, definitely check it out when you get a chance. This is dope. I've never done a live on a Saturday because people are usually out and about, so I didn't expect nobody to be on here. But hey, I'll take who's on here. So, amen. Let's see. Uh-oh, I see shots in here being thrown. Trying to make sure I got everything in here. Yeah, I still wish we could have got Don't Look Any Further with Jermaine and Whitney. That would have been a dope song. I would have loved to hear that. Yeah. Somebody says that is something to always say about Brownstone. They sound like a full choir. Their vocals were the only ones truly rival to In Vogue. I like all those girl groups and I like that all of them were different. Like SWV were in their own kind of lane. In Vogue was theirs. Brownstone was in theirs. Changing Faces was in theirs. I like Cut Close. I thought they had a very unique kind of blend because I love their voices on like Keith Sweat's Twisted. I love that blend they have, right? I really like their song Don't Change. Changing Faces I like too. They had a song called Come Closer. I used to play so much. I used to play Come Closer like every day. Love that song. Let me see. Calvin, Michael, do you have any more Usher content coming? I really dug your video on here. On Here I Stand. Huge Usher fan. I don't have anything yet. I'm so pissed because I think the Vegas residency just wrapped for the year. If I can get to Vegas and get to that show, I don't know if that was the last show or not. I don't have any like specific Usher content yet coming. But we'll see later down the line. When's the next podcast? I got to rush you as soon as you drop the next one. I haven't even thought about getting to the next episode yet. I'll be honest, it's probably after the new year, and it's mainly because I have got to get this So What Happened with Mariah out, because y'all have patiently been waiting since March. Right? The problem that I ran into, like I said, one, it was so long, and I had to figure out how to get the story to flow more, and then I just ended up scrapping the whole thing and starting over a few times, just because her story is there's so many layers to it. And then because I like Mariah, but I was never like a super big massive fan, so I had to like really like sit and research, because there was a lot of stuff I didn't know, and so I ended up like getting her book and going through the whole book and just make sure all my references were really good. And so now I'm trying to get that finished, so I'm not really gonna really do any big pre-made videos with a whole lot of research and content until probably after this So What Happened comes out. I'll still be doing the lives and still be doing some of the shorter videos that are like maybe 20 minutes or something, but the big hour-long extravaganzas with a whole bunch of research and facts and stats, you're probably not getting any more this year. So I suggest y'all go back and look at the video of the music talk episodes that I've been uploading, which is kind of like the new music series we're doing. Most likely, if I do anything with Usher, it's going to be in that music talk series. So yeah, you say Cut Close had great voices. After Michael got super snubbed with Bad during the Grammys, it should have been rated Off the Wall was bad enough. I think that was intentional too, because understand, like, by the time Bad came out, as great as Michael was, there were a lot of people who were tired of him, that conversation of just overexposure. So there were a lot of people who were rooting for the downfall already. So it's kind of like, I think he could sense and see that, because even with each loss that he had, they kept panning to his face, and he was over it by then, right? You can tell that there was definitely some animosity towards Michael around that time. Like, all right, too much. You know, they like to humble artists when they get too big. They always do that. And so, yeah. But I said I heard Usher couldn't be extended any longer because Bruno Mars is slated next. Oh, okay, because he's at Park MGM, right? I think Usher's at Park MGM. Yeah, they have them big old contracts and stuff. So once time is up, you got to get out for the next act unless you go to a different venue. Let's see. Because I think even with Britney before, you know, remember she had announced a second residency at a different venue. I think the reason why that was going to be a thing was, I forgot what happened with that. Something happened, but I think that's how we ended up getting Janet's residency, because the Britney one got canceled. And then you got the Janet one in 2019. I think that's how that went. Belize girl, be quiet. I don't want to hear nothing about what I just said. Oh, and speaking of, she said, I fall asleep to all your podcasts. I put a happy face. Somebody said I have I don't believe this, because I think I kind of got a scratchy voice. Sometimes I get real self-conscious of it, and I'll try to put a little bit more into my voice and make it a little bit deeper so it doesn't sound like this all the time. But somebody's like, yeah, your voice is like soothing. I'd be like nodding off perfectly. I'm like, to my voice? This one? Okay. Like, I don't have no pillow talk voice. So I'm like, okay. Ain't no pillow talk in the room with me. This is exactly what you're going to hear at 2 a.m. Just a little bit quieter. All right. Oh, yeah, Usher's doing the Super Bowl. So, hey, we'll probably talk about that if I'm still not in NFL mode. Let's see. Somebody said, I wish Michael would have been able to do a video for Threaten from Invincible with the Rod Sterling rap. It would have been fire. If I could have got one more video off Invincible, I liked Heartbreaker. I thought that was such a cool song. I really like Heartbreaker. Heartbreaker was fun. I liked Break of Dawn is probably my favorite song on that album. I would have loved that video for that one. Or even Heaven Can Wait. That was a good one. Let me see. I don't know if I've seen an artist capitalizing on a Super Bowl hype in recent years as much as Usher. New album, singles, tour. Yeah, if he's smart and he does the rollout, this can definitely be a second wind for him. He, to me, is definitely he's an entertainer that has really taken care of his craft, taken care of his voice, only gotten better as a dancer, only gotten better as a live performer over the years. So yeah, he's somebody I definitely have a major respect for as far as what he brings to entertainment. I appreciate what he brings to the table. Somebody said, my son listens to your podcast every night. He relates to your childhood stories. I wish I had more to tell. Like, there's a few more left, but I feel like I've told all the big stories that are actually worth sitting through for 45 minutes to an hour that are funny, which is why I'm relieved that I'm doing the current series on working with the kids, because I'm like, good, I can talk about that for a good minute, because the 11 years with those kids, that's probably at least going to be 20 episodes by itself. So that can give me some time and give the podcast a few more, some extra time and some extra life while I kind of go back and try to see what I can remember from other moments. Somebody said just make some stuff up. No, it's not the same if you make it up. I think what makes the podcast funny is that everything actually happened. And you're like, what? That's not normal. That's what makes it funny. If I were to do something where I was making something up, it would be a separate podcast, and it would be totally different. But no, just understand everything in Comedically Hard-Headed is reality. Every last thing. The only thing that's not true is a lot of the things. I've changed a lot of people's names just to kind of protect their identity. Because I will say, having a platform that continues to grow, you get some people that are very inquisitive and they really actually go and try to find some of these people. So, or like the worst thing is like, say I'm on Instagram or something and I post something with my brother and I in it, like, or my brother and me in it, they will be like, oh, this is the brother that threw the pizza at your, threw the table mat at your head. I'm like, that don't got to be the comment you leave on the picture, right? I was telling my brother happy birthday. Y'all talking about the time we got in a fight at my grandma's house. But man, somebody said you should start bringing people on who are a part of these stories to tell it from their perspective. On my Instagram, when we were doing the live promoting, when I was fundraising for the short film, my cousin Brandon actually did end up on that live, and we were kind of retelling one of the stories from the podcast where my mom was chewing me out about something regarding college. So he was there for that one. So that was kind of funny. We'll see. The thing is, too, I've moved so much. A lot of these people I'm not in contact with. So like all of the Italy people, the only people from the Italy episodes that I still personally keep up with are like Ricky and Dwayne. We're still like Facebook friends, and every blue moon we'll all check in with each other, which is cool because, you know, all of us have known each other since we were like 8 years old. So that's kind of cool. Those, but you know, there's like those folks. I have not even been to Spanaway, Washington since 2018. So yeah, a lot of the folks I haven't really been in contact with, but we'll see. Said your brother with the nightgown, and he hates that story so much. I know he's pissed I told that one, but love you. I told him he can start his own podcast and tell all my embarrassing stories as well if he wants to, right? Let's see. Somebody said, did I keep journals? Your memory is good. You know, I didn't keep journals, but I think the reason especially from childhood, I remembered everything is because we moved so much. I just always remember what was happening with each grade. So each grade kind of helped me to remember what's happening in that year, what songs are out, and just each moment. Like I remember like kindergarten, I went to school on the military base. I went to Beechwood Elementary, and I remember kindergarten very vividly. I remembered I had a teacher named Miss Carlson. We used to sit on the mats. Remember those carpets that used to have the squares and the numbers and the colors and stuff? And she used to come with that guitar, and we sang, the more we get together. I still remember the dance, too. We used to have this little dance where we have to have our little fist, and we'd be like, the more we get together. Like, I remember that crap so vividly. Like, so first grade was, I'm sorry, kindergarten was Miss Purdue. I just talked about first grade, Miss Carlson. Kindergarten was Miss Purdue, this older lady. She had to be like 70 then. And kindergarten was a half day. I remember we did the butterflies and the chrysalises and all that stuff like that. I still remember my first day of kindergarten. I remember all the parents coming in with, and this is the 90s. So this is when the big camcorders, the parents had the big old camcorders where you had to take a knee and record, like big old giant ones. My mom didn't have one because she had to go to work. But I remember all of us came in there. They gave us the little things to color with. We were all coloring. And while we were coloring, that's when the parents would start sneaking out. And then some of the kids in class would realize their parents were there and they would start crying. But I was too occupied with my picture, so I was good. But I just remember all of the different checkpoints. The Italy years were the easiest to remember because it was such a drastic change from being in America. And there were so many major milestones that take place. You remember it all. So most of the stuff that I remember in the podcast are milestones. There's a lot of smaller things I've forgotten about, and sometimes people will remind you. But yeah, the podcast is like a lot of big milestones you remember. And I'm glad that I've done that because I'm like, listen, if I ever get super up there in age and my memory starts going bad, I can always play my old podcast episodes to see what I remember. Let's see. Yeah, it is crazy how we remember things from like so long ago. Okay, my favorite thing to do right now, God bless this person. Somebody has been uploading all of the episodes of Video Soul from BET on YouTube. And I have literally just been turning that on And like they got episodes from like 93, 94, 95. The way I just put that on and just do my chores around the house and act like it's still the 90s up in here. Cause I mean, they got the commercials, they have the news breaks, everything in there. So I have enjoyed that. Like, I love that. So y'all know I'm one of the people that likes to archive. So the way I'd be ripping everything off YouTube and putting it on an external hard drive just to keep for future reference. I love it. I love it. Yeah, if you just type in Video Soul on YouTube, I mean, they have so many episodes now. So get them now, because, you know, stuff be disappearing. Let's see. All right, we're about to get off this because, yeah, I want to do some other things. I want to knock out a few other things before I go to sleep. Oh, yeah, somebody said, OMG, I love watching old commercials and old recordings of shows from the 90s. And what made me so happy, for some reason, like the Coca-Cola jingle had been in my head and I couldn't remember what it was from. I kept hearing it, but, you know, it's like, there was this Coca-Cola commercial that was kind of like an R&B song in the early 90s. And I was like, what do I know that from? So while I was watching the Video Soul thing, the commercial came on. I was like, that's what it is. Because the jingle was just in my head and I couldn't figure out what it was from. And then now there's the jingle and then there's the words with it. And I'm like, okay, Coca-Cola classic, always the one. And then always the real thing. Yeah. I was like, hey, I was tickled to find that commercial. But yeah, that, and then I went and looked up all the old Coca-Cola commercials just to see what else I remember. So yeah, what a time. What a time. Even the commercials were lit back in the day. Okay, the commercials had purpose. We're now in this era. I don't even think we watch commercials because as soon as it goes to commercial, you pick up your phone and start scrolling, right? If you even watch TV at this point. Like, man. But I remember that Coca-Cola jingle used to be on every phone. I was like, hey, that had to be like 93. Had to be. I used to love that commercial. Man. All right. We're almost off here. Yeah, them 90s jingles went in like Mentos, the commercial, that Mentos song. That was like the best commercial song ever. I used to go in on Mentos. Like the Mentos commercial had a good little song. Skip It. Remember Skip It, the toy? Skip it, skip it. Dun, 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 dun. I don't know the words. Y'all know I'm bad with lyrics. If you don't know me by now, I never have nobody's lyrics right. I'll be at the concert singing everything loud, strong, and wrong. But the Skip It commercial, I remember that. That was a good little jingle. I remember that I Feel Like Chicken Tonight. I don't know what company that was. I feel like chicken tonight. And it had a little dance. Like, we just so stupid in the 90s. Just stupid. But, man, what a time. Goodness. As a matter of fact, I'm about to go watch that Coca-Cola commercial, so I'm getting on off this. Anyway, this has been real. I don't know what's next for the channel in this upcoming week, so I don't want to announce anything, but just be on the lookout. But hey, you got 2 videos today because I also reviewed the Beyonce show. So we'll catch up. I will update you. But again, the book club, December 18th, Monday, which is Monday, 9 p.m. Like I said, we're finishing The Short and Tragic Life of Robert Peace. And like I said, I'm kind of in my vault trying to finish this So What Happened so I can, God willing, get it out before the new year. If not, it's definitely going to be out afterwards. But we're going to try to get it out because I just have to really sit and finish it. Anyway, this has been really dope. Let me know what you think about the documentary. Share all your tidbits and all the bits that maybe we didn't get that some of you are familiar with and know because you were there during the era. Put it all in the mix. And let me make sure. Oh, yeah. Folgers. The best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup. Yeah, I used to like that one too. All right. Anyway, I'm off this, folks. Good night.